There is no doubt that the so-called rebel forces attacking the government in Syria are creatures of the United States and of Israel. There's been congressional testimony in the United States openly that the United States had spent more than $500 million on the Syrian rebel forces. And that was some years ago. It's gone up since then. Israel has provided medical and other support facilities to them perfectly openly. The United States yesterday was attacking from the air forces coming from Iraq to try to help the government of Syria, while Israel was attacking the links between Syria and Lebanon, again with bombing from the air. And the forces facing the rebels, the Syrian Arab Army, the National Army of Syria, has been bombed relentlessly by Israel for more than a year. So there's no doubt whatsoever that the rebels are backed by the CIA and backed by Israel. And that's what's happening here. It's an attempt by the Americans and the Israelis, aided by the Turks, to overthrow the regime in Damascus in order to block assistance flowing through Syria to Lebanon.
We created ISIS. I mean, ISIS is no less than the people up in Islamberg, no less than Gulen, is a CIA creation. John McCain, for heaven's sake, was over there with the ISIS officials. We created them. They came from the al-Nusra group, the Syrian Liberation Front. These two organizations combined, and they morphed into ISIS. It's our creation. We create them. We still direct them. When ISIS warriors are injured in battle, where are they transported? They're transported, for heaven's sake, to Israel. They're treated by the Israelis in Israeli hospitals and brought back to battle.
Well, plenty of the rebels have acknowledged that they've been supported by Israel, and they've thanked Israel for helping them.
Yeah.
In fact, arms are oftentimes caught. Israeli arms are caught on en route to the rebel groups.
And others.
You tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up, CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad is institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions.
Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Thursday, November 6th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Definitely thought it was an important point to reiterate. The obvious, long outlined reality that the U.S. and Israel have been arming, funding, and in a large way created what is Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the many different variations of terrorist organizations that they have used over the years to achieve their goals. And it doesn't mean every single element of every single part of these things are always completely under control, or if ever that was the case. The point is, though, you can't really deny that connection. And I'll go through this today as we get into the point, but I think that opening clip is important for many reasons, of the many different clips, and we could go on forever from there, many different examples. But of course, with the ISIS-linked attack that we're going to discuss again today that the FBI is investigating, 5 people apparently been arrested. And we'll go over why I think this still appears to be something that's being obviously manipulated. And there's, at this point in time, still, as of right now, no indictments. There's been criminal complaints that everyone seems to be framing as indictments, but it's not the same thing. And I'll go over why I think that's important. But just understanding what this is and how it's being used in regard to the Muslim issue that they're pointing to, because remember, this is Dearborn, Michigan. We're talking about Muslims that they picked up. And every other part of the story around the FBI investigation that I believe was a false flag effort based on all the evidence. But again, it's being flushed out right now. When I think we can prove something, you'll hear that from me. But with all that's happening, I mean, the idea that if you frame, again, considering the kind of fervor around this conversation, if you look at all the facts in the story, outside of them claiming what they say they know that you haven't seen, every single point of the story could be, I mean, you could make exactly every single point they allege that says they're terrorists. You could point at me and say the same thing, whether I own certain things or I say certain things online or I go to certain ranges. Those things are meaningless, or rather your rights in this country. But if you put it all together and say they have, tactical vests and different magazines, and then because ISIS linked, it all seems like it's big, bad stuff, except every one of those things are legal. You're allowed to do those in this country. You're allowed to own a rifle. You're allowed to go to shooting range. It's interesting to think about how, if it does end up to be the case that a power structure like this could literally manufacture events like this for so long. How many times, if you want to watch the last show we did, I recommend we go through the reality of that, all the different many times they've faked events to stop them. And that's not a secret. But how they could do this, frame an entire, take somebody who in this point, hypothetically, would be an innocent person and just use them to be able to achieve that goal. It speaks to the nefarious nature of what I think government is at the end of the day. But that point, we're going to get to at the latter segment today. I'm going to talk about, to start, a couple of interesting points. One thing about censorship that I think is very important, overlapping with Israel and what's happening right now, and that overlapping with the Mamdani point. You might not expect where I'm going to take this today, but I think those that watch this show, I'm sure you already know, seeing as how I incessantly point out that we don't support any government and don't support any politician. And, it's just, but you get the people that perceive it being left and right because you call out the current thing. It's interesting, but it's not hard to recognize where this seems to go. I mean, realistically, just to open the point on this before we come back to it is, this is a person who wants to build the government, who wants to increase the size of the government and government involvement in your life. Why would anybody think I support that? Or anybody in a position that's calling out, like coming from a limited government perspective, and that even seems to be most conservatives right now. He calls himself a Republican, but I'm of the mind that all of these people are government, are in the interest of trying to control your life. And I'll make that case today, but I want to go over what this exposed to us around the left-right paradigm, the weird kind of meltdown from the right, and then the different part of that from Trump, simultaneously sort of saying it was stolen, but yet this is what happens because Democrats hate us. It's just a weird kind of clumsy experience that I'll take you through on this. But why I think it's very important, of course, you can't deny that this overlaps with Israel and the larger agenda and some foreign policy points to reiterate Venezuela, but then end with the FBI point. Now, to start in general, I wanted to make sure you guys heard today. Actually, no, I take it back. It's going to be tomorrow. I'm going to be putting out a panel that we're having today. In a couple hours, or few hours, we're going to be doing a panel on digital IDs, a follow-up, because we've done a couple of them so far with the IMA. And it's going to be a pretty big one. Corbett's going to be there. I think about 6 or 7 of us, I think, so far, but it's up in the air. So it'll be a really important conversation about where it currently is and how, what we were discussing about it before, the importance of that one agenda, but that when that comes to pass, that the moment that digital ID in essence becomes everywhere and insurmountable. Like right now it's coming up, it's happening everywhere, but it's not officially everything. You cannot do it right now. When it becomes that, hopefully not, it is one of the most important points, if not the most important point for where this all comes together. And so we've talked about that a lot, but we're going to talk about it in the kind of through the lens of where it is right now and how close it is to becoming that, and some more kind of overarching kind of individual investigations from different parts of the IMA that I think are going to be presented, but it hasn't happened yet. So we'll be playing that tomorrow, most likely. So keep an eye out for that. But the digital ID part of this, it's interesting to see that both left and right, and just those aware of the whole lie, everyone seems to be aware of how concerning that is. Isn't that an interesting thing to think about? Left, right, anywhere you look right now, you ask anybody, everyone seems to be on guard about that. And there's parts of the right and parts of the left that don't care for varying reasons. but it's pretty easy to see the majority of people are a little bit uncomfortable about it. And that's the thing I keep showing everybody. That is the actual majority of people that are actually uncomfortable with I think it's most everything that's happening right now, but you can decide for yourself. Just take note of those moments when you can see through the crack, right? When you notice that the left-right paradigm just does not represent the majority of people anymore, if it ever did. But let's start today. And my point in shouting that out is to make sure you guys check it out for tomorrow. I don't know if we'll get a show done tomorrow. I basically, so you guys know, try to get a show done every day, organizing the tabs and so on, and just things that happen overall. But ultimately, that'll be the plan. But tomorrow, that'll be most likely coming out. I hope you guys can check it. And I guess I'll include one last thing on that there has been an update from Odyssey. I don't want to continue to put out the updates because it's been so long. And anything outside of something in your hands, I think people are just not even, they're waiting to see something. And I agree with that. And so Odyssey last point told us that the kind of portal system they're building for the IMA is close. They've had a few different issues they've had to update. They just gave us some images. I'll show you actually next time we decide what, once I feel like it's actually really close, but it does look really cool. And it's going to be something where you guys can engage with individual parts of the IMA, but also the IMA portal as like the IMA, everyone together kind of production. But it's going to be really neat because it's sort of a decentralized internet overlap, and it'll be somewhere where you guys can support the individuals. Because as I've said, as always, there's no monetary financial part of the IMA. We're all individuals. We're just collected because we believe in what we're doing, But on that note, more coming for IMA in general. So let's start with some censorship that I really wanted you to see. This one's really, really weird to me. Now, we've all been noticing the weirdness of Twitter. Some people don't care. They support it because their things get more prominent. But overall, I think it's all the algorithm. Even the Grok and Elon and right side, it's like, change that. It's too woke today. It's very weird how much everything's being kind of pushed back and forth on Twitter. This one, I'm not even sure how to explain this, whether this is a glitch, but it feels very easy. It makes sense not being so. You'll see what I mean when you watch it, how clearly this could make sense, where having somebody else's tweet being very contentious, sort of like accidentally come through another person's account. You could see how that mistake would move mountains in some cases. But this is Sam Parker pointing this out. Here's the clip, and I'll show you what Laura Loomer had to say about it, since she's the point in this clip.
Check this shit out. So there's some kind of glitch going on where it's going to have this pro-Israel bullshit on people's post. And then when you click the post and you're like, oh, this guy doesn't normally support Israel.
So for the podcast, it's Evan Kilgore. I'm not exactly sure. Tell me in the chat what his exact position. I know he's associated with Turning Point USA in some way, or he was. The point is that he's supposed to be on that side of the conversation. And his tweet is, it says, what people need to understand is that Tucker Carlson and his people like him are running an anti-Trump op.
Then you click on the post and you see what he really says.
So you click on the post and it goes to, nowhere in the Bible does it tell Christians to support the modern secular nation of Israel. That's interesting. And if you read the rest of the other post, it seems to be the opposite sentiment to a degree.
But it's showing up as this bullshit on a lot of people's posts, and they're not saying this. It got to be some kind of hack. X is definitely being compromised.
Okay. So the first part, I think, was from the person I'll show you. Included the link, which I appreciate, to who actually made that video. I don't know if this was also part of it or this was something Parker added. I'm not sure. But this is what makes it clear, is that this is the Loomer tweet, which is actually where it shows that, what people need to understand. Now, you could argue maybe they just copied it and posted it, right? But I went and looked for myself, and I wasn't able to find his version of that.
Well, there it is. It's Laura Loomer's tweet. That's what got substituted for Evan Kilgore's tweet.
Now, I do find that very weird. Again, of all things, you could argue that kind of does make sense in the world of glitches, right? Like, who knows if that's even possible functionally in the background. But even if it is a glitch, it's something that could be used later as an accident. It's just an interesting thing to think about. So even now, you could be looking at someone's content, and that could be somebody else's information that's accidentally coming through this person's platform. And it's like a deep fake version for, everything means nothing, nothing means everything kind of a world, right? Not the same as question everything, right? Because question everything is, you should always be going, could that be wrong? Could that be false? Yes, it always could. Do I have evidence of that? No. Okay, continue, right? This is about creating a world where there's like in a deep fake scenario, you could be trying to verify it and ultimately not even realize that it's a deep fake. And it's a different level of it. We should always be questioning things while considering all possibilities. This is about driving you to a place where you don't even try anymore because it's so impossible. I think that's kind of the engineered helplessness they're trying to always push. Here's what Laura said, which is funny. This is so fake. Dark mode to light mode. You followers also, your followers must all be dumb AF. And that is her. And he says, well, that's your tweet. I mean, here, and he links to the tweet. So I don't know if maybe she meant something else by that, but that's her tweet right there. Either way, that was just humorous. But the overarching point is the weirdness of that, right? That happening. Very odd. And my opinion, these kind of things are, the best kind of manipulations are not things that appear to be an over manipulation, right? They don't want you to know what's happening, right? On top of that, on the censorship points, Robert Inlakesh, YouTube, not new that YouTube's deleting stuff, but it's actually interesting that they suddenly started pushing really hard, right aligned with this interesting shift in all of the people controlling media around the world and all being pro-Israel, like a Larry Ellison and Barry Weiss kind of an overlap. But on YouTube and other platforms, this all kind of happened at the same time. Now, they'd always been censoring around certain conversations, but this was an instant sort of like mass deleting of not propaganda. I mean, you could always call something you want propaganda, but we're talking about people like Robert Inlakesh who do very measured and sourced work, or people in Palestine, or people who are doing journalist work, or just people that are going, look at what Israel's doing today, and just completely deleting entire channels. They deleted all of his coverage, but specifically of Israel soldiers shooting civilians. Think about that. He's got tons of content, but they specifically went through and including children targeted on a live stream along with his entire account. No community guideline violated and 3 separate excuses given. Then Google deleted his email and won't even respond to appeals. Zachary Foster says, how it started, don't be evil, how it's going. The Intercept, YouTube quietly erased more than 700 videos documenting Israeli human rights violations, literally going after specifically the videos that prove that they are hurting people because they're choosing to. I mean, this is the wild nature of where we are. We're not going to get so much into the Israel part today. That will be the next thing I get into extensively. But, the evidence we have of what they're doing, the evidence of genocide, of starvation, all the genocide experts saying so, all the starvation experts, very, very clear. And yet everyone, you're a lying racist. And then on top of that, they go and do their best to censor the content you can proves the thing they say isn't happening. And we still go, no, you're a racist, or whatever the percentage, 0.01% of maniac lying people out there that are pretending this isn't the most obvious thing in the world. I mean, that's what I would feel, but who knows what percentage that might be. But the crazy reality is you either can choose to look and see what's happening, or you can pretend it's not there. That's where I think the world is right now. And I think that's obvious to see. That's not the majority. Warfare analysis says it's not only YouTube removing documented crimes, it is a lot other than just even these 2 platforms. It happened kind of in a mass sweep, which we know happens, right? We remember the first purge, and it always kind of happens as a coordinated effort. But he said Twitter is doing it too. This is actually really wild. You'll see some of this happening right now. And I'll just jump to this first. This is what he's seeing in other parts of the world, where it says, due to local laws, we're temporarily restricting it. Yeah, that's Elon Musk bowing to censorship. Now, you could argue that that's just how business works. Maybe you're right. My point is, then fine, at least acknowledge that's not absolute free speech. That's not what it looks like. Absolute does not mean except when this happens, right? That's just stupid. But this tweet or this thread, which you'll see there's a lot of this happening on the platform right now. You'll find things like this. Look, all these see all these tweets that aren't there. Now check this out. It's not before you'd think before, like I talked about, like it's being kind of suppressed, or it maybe just deleted it, right? But you click the link. Oh, so it was doing something different from me earlier. That's interesting. Hold on, let me do this. Okay, yeah. So see, it's weird. You click it now, and it shows you. Oh, and there it did it right there. See, the CO2 just did 2 different things. How interesting is that? So instead of going to a place where it says deleted, like you just saw for a second there, weirdly enough, it takes you back to the page where it's not there. Don't you find that? See that now it went there, but it says this doesn't exist. God, that was so weird. I don't know why it's doing that sometimes and sometimes not. The point was, as you just saw, for a second there, rewind the page, you saw it, you click it, and it takes you to that. Anyway, the point is it's gone. That's the first point. The content of all these videos are videos of things that you can prove, or because that's the thread. Sorry, I should have read at the beginning. proof of the 40 beheaded babies. Since the Western media failed to provide evidence of the 40 beheaded babies, all the evidence you need in this thread are babies from the Israeli bombing, right? So the point is, they're trying to get your attention, so people jump in going, oh, I'm going to prove that Israel's right. And it's a long thread proving, rather just showing all the children that Israel's bombings have beheaded. But the videos are all gone. Now, like you just saw, I guess sometimes it goes to the gone, but in my experience, most times I've clicked these, it goes to the tweet again. So it makes it feel like it's either a glitch or something like that. Just long story short, they're deleting tons of content across this platform right now. Tons of content. Is that free speech absolutism? I don't think so. I don't think we even need to pretend otherwise. It's so weird how things, in my experience on this platform, that's the norm. That one day I click something, it does one thing, the next time it's something else. At least that's my experience. How weird is that? You guys saw it, rewind it. It happened right when we were live. Now, past the censorship, but just think about how that's happening with all that we're about to get into and all the other things we talk about. I mean, this is how it works today. This is a controlled element of conversation. They want you to be corralled. Even when you think you're expressing freely, you're being corralled and manipulated and advertised and far more than that. And we understand how far this has been going. But on Israel and the overlap to that, because Israel plays an obvious it's related to Mamdani no matter what. I mean, that's just because it's obvious and because that's been a stated part of the conversation. And almost every point of contention around him relates to something that Israel in particular has centered in their agenda. So Kenneth Roth points out in a larger point that connects back to the protests on the campuses, and it does relate to exactly what we're seeing right now with this artificial astroturfing and gaslighting all over this platform. Kenneth Roth, citing The Guardian, surge in anti-Semitism investigations at U.S. Universities. Read the whole headline. We've already actually read more than one article like this, by the way. This is as of November 5th. Surge in anti-Semitism investigations at U.S. universities after October 7th attacks, data shows. And the point is, at least 24% of anti-Semitism complaints against U.S. universities originated with groups or individuals unaffiliated with the university. Pro-Israel organizations were behind 78%. So 24%, or at least 24% of them, originated from people who weren't even affiliated, and 78% came from groups that aren't necessarily part of the college. Just pro-Israel groups are getting involved. And on top of that, everything else we've shown you about the countless examples of lies, like being stabbed in the eye with a flag, Stefanik screaming how they were saying, kill all the Jews, and the cops themselves said that didn't even happen in that school. On and on. There's countless examples. And the reality of the evidence that came back that showed that they were being instigated. They were throwing things into the crowds, and the moment something happened, then they fought back. And, it's how this happens everywhere. Right? Just like we're seeing with the protests right now with the left, the right, it's no different what side you're on. The government or the police in that sense will create the conflict to justify shutting down your protest. Same idea here, right? And we have to remember how our police in a lot of ways and our military, they're training in many ways alongside the IDF, ICE as well. That's not every one of them. It's going to be the same, but you are watching those tactics play out in our country. So when you watch them, the police alongside the Zionist protesters basically create the justification to claim that they're racist, it's not hard to see how this plays out. All I said on this was pro-Israel organizations being 78% of the complaints. Anyone engaging honestly with the facts already knew this because you can see it. You could look and see for yourself this was being manufactured. And that's not to say that there's not racism. The point is that they actually manufactured enough lies around it to hide whatever might have been there in the first place, which is, again, if you actually understand it, the kind of the real agenda around these people. The same type of blind adherence to false narratives is what we already currently see in the U.S. mainstream partisan discussion. I feel it's the same influence, right? So right now within the left-right divide, you're seeing the same kind of like blind adherence to what the narrative is versus what the facts show. And I genuinely think that's at least in part because of what Israel's doing here, but it's been going on a long time. Here is Mark Levin. Now, you might have seen this on AM Wake Up With Us. I think I might have played it before, but this is one, the clip we played before from him as well in this same setting at the coalition. What is it? The Republican Jewish Coalition. He said, you think you're going to change the world with your little podcast and your radio show? Not as long as I'm here. You have to come through us, right? So basically just enshrining what we know, that the elitists like this want the status quo. which is what they never pretend we all want. They always pretend like we're going to change the world, except they're coming out of the shadows. They are slinking, or rather slithering out of the shadows, and basically showing you we're not going to let you do anything because we like the way this is. We like the genocide. We like the endless war state. We like that everyone suffers except the 1%. We like that. That's what they're telling you. This one is showing you that it is the woke right, like what the real meaning of it, not the way everyone misrepresents it. The same exact thing was happening on the left. Cancel culture, woke identity, or rather identity politics. Same thing, depending on what category, what wedge issue. It's the same concept, the left being more broad, the right being seemingly focused around anti-Semitism, and some overlapping, with there's plenty of points you could fold into it, but the point comes down to censorship. Canceling people, deplatforming people, right? Well, here's an example of Mark Levin from Fox News using both of those terms exactly. Would you imagine before I even play this that the Republicans would be like, cancel people, deplatform them? Well, you should know that is what's happening. They just don't like to say it. Well, here's Mark Levin showing you that they are exactly the same thing.
Hitler admirers, Stalin admirers, Jew haters, American haters, Churchill haters.
Right there. I mean, so just understand, as always, you're allowed to hate whatever you want. The idea that they claim that you're not, and this is not just from him, because you understand he's an average person, or rather a random citizen. Not even that, really, but he's not in the government. But the point is that the government, Trump administration, as well as the other side when they're in power, tell you can't think that. You can't say those mean words. Biden, right? Biden says, Trump says, you can't hate America. Well, yeah, you can, guys. I guess you forgot how to, over here you're screaming about free speech and ideological freedom, and then you go, but you can't hate America. Well, guess what? You're an idiot because you just said the opposite. You're allowed to think and hate and feel what you want. When you break the law, well, that's where things change. And that's the same conversation for literally everything we're dealing with today. Well, we'll get into Mamdani. As much as I think, like all the rest of them, he's not on your side. The reality is that they're trying to create an idea where he can't think those things. He can't believe in that thing. That means he's a bad guy. Well, then you're saying we don't have freedom in this country. You got to pick one. You can't keep pretending like it's one or the other. This is where we are. So what he's doing is saying you can't hate America, right? Are Churchill haters? What? You can't. So a guy from history that's not even so a leader of the UK, of Britain, who, by the way, was a horrible person, very racist, very manipulative. Yes, but he's framed like every leader of a country as somehow change the world for freedom and liberty, whatever. No, you can look it up. Just like Herzl's diary, he's rife. His racism was wild. I mean, maybe you don't care about that, right? It's the point. You can decide what you want. But Churchill is a person. And you're telling us Americans we can't hate Churchill, or you're gonna deplatform us and cancel us, which is what he's about to say, or even Hitler. Look, you can like and feel what you want, but the idea I can say, look, you're disgusting for thinking that person is nice, but you can think what you want, but not according to the Mr. Freedom, Mr. No censorship, Mr. Constitutional rights and free speech, except when he doesn't like those things, except when Israel doesn't like those things.
Stalin admirers, Jew haters, American haters, Churchill haters. You're damn right we're going to cancel them and deplatform them. It's called the market system.
Right. The market system. Right. So when they manipulate things to get what they want, that's just how the market works, right? We were just talking about this on AM Wake Up about, I think it was, Candace Owens saying that, that the market's always right. Or really somebody told her once the market's always right kind of thing. Well, no, when you have corruption, so when they cheat things into reality, I guess that's just the way it works. That's ridiculous to me. But what he's saying here is obvious. Right. And let's not forget that the Zionist organization aligned itself with Nazi Germany, aligned itself with Stalin, tried to anyway, before and during the final solution. So what he's doing is right there saying you can't hate the thing, you can't, or supporters with Stalin, but that's there are examples on both sides of this. You have Zionists who say things that almost glowingly about Nazism and almost glowingly about what Hitler said. You have examples of Zionists literally saying that Hitler should have taken you out, to other people who are Orthodox Jews. I play these clips for you. But see, that makes no sense to people who can't imagine that world because they only look through the lens of what the media tells them is real. You can watch these things for yourself.
American haters, Churchill haters. You're damn right we're going to cancel them and deplatform them. It's called the market system. They don't have a lifetime job like a bureaucrat who we're going to protect. And if they're your friend...
To protect? Oh, okay. So in case you forgot, this so-called journalist believes it's his job to protect the bureaucrats. See, he's an insider elitist oligarch. That's the real, the media thing is just the way he presents himself. He is on the inside. At least that's how he sees himself at this position. Because if you're going to be protecting them and going after us, that's not a journalist. You're not speaking truth to power. You're literally protecting power and pushing back people calling it out. You're a fraud, man. You're an absolute fraud. But he knows that. At the core, he obviously knows that. He just wants, it's like all the rest of them. They need to present it to the people, the lowest common denominator. Probably most of the people, well, I'm not sure how you would frame it, whether people in these groups, either way, fraud.
There's something wrong with you. No Hitler admirer, Holocaust denier, platformer should be anybody's friend.
Oh, yeah. So now most of this was barely concealed going after Tucker. But, so now you're not on the platform anybody. You see how this was working? And this is the same thing that these people were screeching about, and rightly so at the time, when the left was calling, you can't talk to that person. That makes you a Nazi. And they were like, oh, you're such a snowflake. Well, how am I supposed to have an interview with? Well, yes, rightly so. What about a person you don't like? Aren't we supposed to flesh out ideas and so you can expose to others watching why his ideas are bad? No, you're supposed to ignore them and never let them see the light of day because we like freedom and democracy, or whatever. Democracy is the wrong term. I'm just trying to make it, they're lying about the things they claim to care about is what I'm trying to get at here. But the obvious reality is that this is at its core about controlling what you can say and do. Every which way, from a little different angle, and this being, I guess, the right. But if you really pull it all back, the right and the left are identical today, outside of the things they claim they believe in. And maybe they really do in some cases, but I say it like that for a reason, because if you look at the action, you look at the outcome, I've said this for so long, they're the same thing.
Matter of fact, you don't get to wrap your psychotic, mental, unhinged, Nazi, Klan, jihadist bullshit around American patriotism.
Right, great, because, Nazi, jihadist, same thing, right? Guys, I'm telling you, their clumsy vanilla ISIS thing seems to have not gone away. And I'm telling you, I'm going to get to something at the end here around that they're overlapping with Iran. It's my feeling entirely, my prediction, based on just what I sense and what I can see. But my track record's pretty good in that regard. And I've said this for a while about the kind of mashing of these things together. If they have an effort, if they have an opportunity to link Iran in particular, or anything even related to like Hezbollah or Hamas, to something they claim is happening through the left in this country, they will do it. I feel like that's already starting to be done. And I mean, it is already done to a degree, right? They already have the argument that the lefts and Palestine and Hamas supporters, they're all terrorists. They're literally saying that right now. But I mean in earnest, where it becomes like an actionable thing where they're going, we're arresting politicians because they're terrorists. This is how wild this gets. People like this are not only driving that into reality, they're literally telling you, you're somehow, it's like telling you that somehow that Hamas is working with ISIS, even, for example, is they're ideologically not the same, and one has fought the other, but they just try to mash it together to make a point. They hope that you're too stupid to see through it. I know you're not.
You don't get to claim you're MAGA and America first when you're lining up with the Marxists and the Islamists and Hamas and the terrorists.
They're terrorists and the terrorists. Well, guess what, man? You can believe in any ideology. Let's just take the first one and avoid the part of terrorist, because then that means anyone they disagree with. But listen.
When you're lining up with the Marxists and the Islamists.
Okay, so a Muslim or a Marxist. Okay, so you can't be America first, which just means believing in this country's success. Well, what if they believe that Marxism will butter this country? I mean, look, if we're not children about this, we all know, guys, everyone who's honest can know that there are people who believe that, who believe that ideology will better the lives of Americans. People think socialism, communism, different variations of it will better American lives. They genuinely believe that. Some of them think it will just gain them power. Some of them just think it's something they can use to troll the right. The point is, there's varying positions. The idea that every one of them is this secret jihadist infiltrator, which I'm sure that's possible too. I know it's possible. I'm sure there's some cases of that from Israel, from foreign countries. Yes. But the idea that you could just broad stroke and say anybody who believes in this idea is a terrorist, monster, jihadist. No, some of them just think that. Some of them think that will succeed. Some of them maybe misguidedly think it won't. The bottom line is that he's trying to broad stroke it in order to make you think anybody who disagrees with what they think is the other, the bad guy, the villain. And you're not. So my point is that is not the accurate picture. You must know they're honest people. So what he's saying here is you can't be America first if you don't agree with us. So does that make it America first, or does it make it Mark Levin first, MAGA first, or rather Trump first, right? The team sport politics first. This is, it just has to be taken, obviously, that people can believe that they want this country to be good and differ on how it should get there. Mind-blowing, right? How crazy is that? We've completely lost the nuance in this ridiculous partisan conversation. People like this, these screaming, mindless ideologues, will get you to do whatever they need for their interests. In this case, you know he's fighting for Zionism, guys. He's not even quiet about that. And we'll get into it right now coming up here. That Zionism is being exposed by left and right. It's falling apart. Before we get to that clip, which you might have seen going around, which is important, from Turning Point USA of all places. And the answer is even more crazy. And Iran connected too. Remember that for the end. Here is Mark Levin, who says politicians who won't condemn Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, quote, need to be afraid. He says they need to be afraid of us. He tells a Jewish group gathering at Republican Jewish Coalition Summit in Las Vegas. So now you can't even believe something different. So somebody, maybe you don't like Tucker, maybe somebody else does. And you're saying you can't be, that people who want to believe in Tucker need to be afraid of you? I mean, guys, this is insane rhetoric. These people are insane. This is a level well beyond we've ever seen. That's not because Mark suddenly became that. I think people like this have always been there. They're feeling either the opening to, or they're desperate and don't know what else to do next. I think it's probably both, to be honest, but realistically, you need to call this out. Anybody who as I said, tell us again about free speech and freedom of ideology, Mark, you utter hypocrite. You can't be like, you're not allowed to, we're going to attack you for that. Now, look, you can argue that an individual can say, like if it's not a government censorship point, he can, as an individual, say, I want to make you afraid, but it's just hypocritical to argue that we're fighting for freedom of ideology and then attack people who don't believe your exact ideology. It's just kind of stupid. Now here, General Flynn against Mark Levin. So think of this. Flynn, who's very, very diehard Republican support. There's been a little schism, I guess, between the Trump support because of what happened between them. But I guess they've weirdly kind of fallen back in line for the most part. But Mark Levin, in regard to General Flynn, says this is called foreign interference in the United States. And he points to a clip of Tucker Carlson discussing nearly 100% of our politicians have an AIPAC guy. You saw this. That was Massey. I might even have that really quickly. Yeah, right here.
Republicans who come to me and say, that's wrong what AIPAC is doing to you. Let me talk to my AIPAC person. By the way, everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What does that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are, firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
I don't know how it works on the Democrat side, but that's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to DC, you go have lunch.
Yeah, that's only Israel. Only Israel. There's literally no other lobbying group that has that. And AIPAC is Israel. It's not hard to understand. I've done entire shows on the reality of the Zionist committee. I forget the original name, the AZP. I forget. The point was that they ultimately had the original name, and it was directly tied. It was an Israeli entity. JFK wanted them to register under FARA, as well as the Dimona Nuclear Institute. And I was actually really just recently sharing another point about the Palestinian statehood, and Israel pushed back on all of it. And then JFK died, and then none of it happened. You can decide what that means for yourself. I think it's pretty clear, but overall, it's always in front of, it's always, everything we talk about is something kind of like that, where it's just very, very, it's now that everything's proven, but very clear, where a detective would look first, for example. And when you get the sense that everyone's trying to desperately push you in a different direction, well, that usually says something. But here, the AIPAC guy, General Flynn, says this is called foreign interference. It is, guys. Again, the point is that it was originally an Israeli entity that then never had to register as FARA because of what happened with JFK. So, and you could look it up on Wikipedia. You can easily prove that they changed the name, and it even says because they wanted it to appear more American. It's very, very clear. So Mark Levin says, wow, who knew? At a time like this, they're coming out of the closet, even some you'd never expect. So it's what he means is you're a racist. So you mean it's racist to point out that a foreign government influencing policy? You know where this goes, guys. Anyone criticizing Israel's government gets called a racist because Mark Levin says you secretly hate Jews. Well, maybe he secretly does. That has nothing to do with whether their government is influencing policy. These people are working for a foreign power, guys. And General Flynn says, no, Mark, I believe this is a legitimate question. Do our elected representatives get financial assistance from an Israeli lobby? Guys, the answer is yes, period. Nobody disagrees with that. Not even they disagree with it. It's about the hiding from that reality. And it says they do get assistance from Big Pharma. They get assistance from Qatar. Do they get assistance from XYZ company or group? We need to know who our elected representatives are influenced by when we are making decisions about whether or not we should vote for them. I believe these are legitimate questions. Of course they are. The fact that he even has to calmly walk this through is because these people are lunatics, in my opinion, and he knows what he's going to do. You don't need to. It's like saying the sky is blue and everyone push back about the reality of it. You going, well, let me, calmly explain why it actually makes sense to consider that it's blue. We all know it. It's right there. You can see it, guys. It's obvious. Now, you may disagree with that. That's what I think it is. Obvious. But Mark Levin and the response to this whole thing is just so interesting that calling out the obvious is causing them to now call hardcore supporters racist. That's desperation. Now, this is why it's so obvious, or rather one of the examples of it being that obvious. Chris Menahan points out a student at a Turning Point USA event in Auburn asked a very important question. And I'll address what I said afterward. Now, this is important. And this is, by the way, what you keep seeing at these events, almost more than any other place. The acknowledgement of the concern about Israel and then his response from Trump's family is, I mean, I'm kind of floored, honestly. You could have clumsily put out a better response. His response shows you that I think that I argue they were, my opinion, ready for that kind of question. And that's why this answer seems to be immediately in one direction.
Ms. Trump, I'd like to ask about your father's relationship with Israel. He's taken over $230 million from pro-Israel groups. During the summer against Iran, even though he advised against it, Israel still attacked Iran and the U.S. still bombed on behalf of Israel. Your father's frustrations with Netanyahu have been made clear when he cursed on national TV over the situation. Israel has not been a great ally to the U.S. all the way since 1960 when they bombed the USS Liberty. Israel is a nation.
Good round of applause right there. You're not putting this away.
Where Christians are constantly under attack in both Gaza and the West Bank.
Right.
We talk about America first and defending Christians, but how can we do this if we align ourselves with a nation that does not do that itself?
Look at that. There's just no air in that. That's obvious, right? They're persecuting Christians. This is, and USS Liberty, they're not an ally. They're not an ally, right? They're an enemy, is what he's really obviously getting at, to Christianity, to American interests. Here's how Trump's son answers.
There's no question my father's had frustration. In fact, I think he's had frustration throughout the whole conflict with both sides. At the same time, make no...
Oh, talking about both sidesing the issue, right? He didn't ask about that. He was, both sides, Hamas too, because he knows, in my opinion, that Israel will not be happy with them going, yes, he had issues with Israel. So you got to be like, no, it was with the whole general thing. Anyway.
No mistake. You have a nation that is chanting death to America every single day on the streets of Tehran. Oh. You have a nation that will develop a nuclear weapon, and you have a nation that will use that nuclear weapon against the Western way of life. There's no question about it.
Notice something. Look real quickly. The guy wants to get the microphone back. This is not answering his question, and clearly this is just the talking points, but not even really addressing the point. Because see, what he said was about bombing Iran. That was the only connection to it. That had nothing to do with whether Israel his response has nothing to do with whether Israel's influencing the United States. What he's saying is that Iran, bad guy. Iran wants to kill America. Iran, nuclear bomb. By the way, all of which so far have been either complete misrepresentations or outright lies. As always, the idea that you can easily prove, even acknowledged by the U.S. government, is that the majority of Iranians love America and the United States. They don't love our government, you see, because they're not there. This is what is happening in the world today. People are very obviously aware that it's the government that's the problem. And even the government says that. When they say very clearly, when they address the translation, they're saying death to America. And the translation, what they're saying is death to the American imperialist government control. They'll say that. You ask them, I've had many interviews with people who travel through Iran, completely people that are pro either side, and very clearly come back showing you the opposite of what they frame, and opposite about some restrictive, complete Muslim controlled territory. It's not the case, not even with the hijab. Yes, they've got laws. It's not really enforced everywhere. Lies everywhere you go, guys. Highly technologically advanced in Iran. They're not what or in any of these places, by the way. Same with Palestine. They are trying to create an image of the other. What he's doing right now is going Iran, bad guy, Iran, bad guy. Now, look, I was going to show you is look at the guy just quickly reaching for the microphone. I think this is telling.
Weapon against the Western way of life. There's no question about it. You have a nation that will use proxies around the world, whether it's Yemen, whether it's a lot of other ones.
Nope, not proxies. You can prove this, by the way. In fact, you could far more prove the groups they're pointing to. All of them are being funded and trained and worked with by the U.S. and Israel. That's the reality of this. That's one of the main points of today as we go to the FBI point, that the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the groups they're literally saying are proxies of the bad guys they're pointing to are their groups that they've worked with and funded. It's so insane where we are.
To inflict serious harm on this nation, and they don't hide it. They don't hide it. In fact, it's really interesting. About a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, they put out the Ayatollah in Iran.
Okay, just so you're clear, we're now way into Iran. Iran and bad Iran, things are on bad. Okay, does that answer the question? No, not even close.
And put out an emoji, like a little short video clip of a drone hovering over my father's head as he played golf. This was literally posted on the Ayatollah's, Twitter page.
Yeah, which is I argue crazy, right? But how is that any different than every single thing you see from the ridiculous PR marketing team that is Trump's administration right now? Every day they do stuff like that. Every day they post videos. And I mean, like, way worse than that. Videos, even about Americans dumping excrement on people protesting from a jet, or showing images of Palestine being completely occupied and destroyed. Like, these are or images of them doing terrible things to people. Guys, this has been shared and publicized. It's just, as always, especially with this broken team sport politics child's game they play, that it's always okay when they do it, bad when the other side does it. And they all do the same thing. They all want to censor the other side and gripe when the other side does it. It's just pathetic. And they know that, though. So what he's doing right now is going, Iran did a thing that had a video with a drone above Trump. Well, yes, we all know what that's supposed to insinuate. Is it a crime? No. But see, what he's doing is look at what they did, the same thing we do. Therefore, they're the worst country in the world we have to destroy.
Following my father around a golf course with a crosshair right on top of him, as if they wanted to assassinate him and as if they wanted to hurt him.
Like how they literally assassinated Soleimani with no justification under the guise of a peace deal on a foreign territory they occupy in an airport that's international. That's the reality. Soleimani, or any number of other examples that we could point to, that Trump has literally assassinated people, or Israel has assassinated endlessly entire groups of people in politics, entire people in Qatar, entire groups in Lebanon, people that are in the midst of a negotiation for peace. That doesn't matter, though.
Guys, Iran wanted to destroy our way of life. They wanted to hurt us.
Oh, did they? I'd love an example other than what the U.S. screams that we never see any evidence for, or all the examples you keep yelling about how Iran hates our freedom, and yet everything we see is the U.S. and Israel and then the UK destroying places in the world under the guise of that being possible. Think about this for a second and look back, and you show me the example where Iran is doing anything that affects American life. Anything. Not narratives, but proxy, the actual reality. Guys, they're just lying to you. And I am of the mind most Americans know this today.
They wanted to inflict real pain. What I can tell you about my father is in terms of...
By the way, I'm sorry. Think about him saying they wanted to inflict pain. This is the kind of childish thing we do. You know what they think and feel. People like that need to be laughed at in the moment. You know what they feel. They wanted to inflict pain. That's stupid. That's worthy of ridicule. You could always argue enemies want to have you suffer, but you never know that. You don't know what they're thinking. This is where we always have to laugh about this stuff and go, man, that's stupid. But that's left-right paradigm all day long. Everything they say is hyperbolic, emotional, and completely broad and undefined. It used to at least be attempted to be somehow rooted, not today.
Of Israel, he wants a peaceful Middle East. He wants peace around the world. He wants
as he's bombing all these countries and destroying everything and siding with the genocide. Of course he does.
The killing. He did that with India and Pakistan.
Nope. No, we didn't. Like, they love this 8 wars in 8 months. It's not true. Didn't happen, right? There's still obvious issues between Azerbaijan. There were agreements that were made, and the thing is still exactly where it was. Just like with Israel and Gaza, just like with Ukraine and Russia, they just lie.
That obviously you saw what he did with Cambodia and Thailand.
Jeez.
He's tried to stop every conflict.
Oh, meanwhile, remember the question?
Because he's sick and tired of the death and destruction. So there have been times that he got mad at Netanyahu. There's plenty of times where he's gotten mad at Putin. There's times where he's been mad at Zelensky. And he uses all of that as a tool to stop pain and destruction and death of
Oh, you see, so what he's saying is, whenever something happens that you think looks bad or doesn't feel like it's going the right way, don't worry, wink, wink. It's a secret Trump plan to make it all work out. And whatever ends up happening, we'll tell you that was always the plan.
people that are our age, your age in most cases, who have become political pawns and who have been marched into literally trenches and killed by the millions. And that's what my father wants to see end.
Yeah, in Ukraine, apparently. Now we're on Ukraine somehow.
Right this second. And that's why he's worked so hard for peace around the world. In fact, Donald Trump is the only president in United States history that's never brought America to war. And I hope he keeps following in that.
Guys, I mean, how can you even say this is the game of playing like we never declare? So if you never allow Congress to declare war while claiming that you have the power to go to war, then you can always ever say we never actually went to war because Congress never declared it. But you say you have the right to do it. So if you're arguing that you have a right to do it and you didn't have to get Congress to do it, then that by logic, de facto means that you did start a war. But who cares about the facts or basic logic? Of course he's at war, bombing Somalia more than any country in history in the last year. All right, not history, excuse me, in a U.S. Administration in a year, more than ever. It's insane. He broke a record. Or in regard to occupation that continues everywhere else, or the bombing of, what was the other one? I was just going to say, just slipped my mind. But you know, the reality of Israel and Palestine, right? The ongoing support, that is an ongoing U.S. war. There's no denying that. The idea that you can ever claim that he hasn't started, it's the same lie they put forward the first time. Now, and watch as we see more, unfortunately, in the next so many years.
Only president in United States history that's never brought America to war. And I hope he keeps following in that crusade.
I mean, you realize he went to Syria, right? I mean, like you could always, when he starts it, like continuing to redeploy the guy, you know, what about the war on ISIS, the war on drugs, the war, this is stupid. But realize that none of that addressed the question at all. Not even close. Now, I think.
In response to the nukes from Iran, Israel has nuclear weapons and is not a part of the IAEA, unlike Iran.
Look at that.
And
now, in case you don't know that, he's talking about the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the point is that Iran very much works with them, and verifiably, even according to the U.S. State Department right now, does not have nuclear weapons. Israel does, and everyone knows it, and they refuse to work with them.
it's just sad to see because I've never seen the American president get treated the way he does by the Israeli government.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'll add. Do we or do we not have phase one of a peace agreement in the...
What are you talking about? What, I mean, this is so insane for them to just go, look at the thing we just claim we have. What she's trying to say that we made a peace deal with Israel. Okay, let's just even say that's the truth. What does that have to do with the question? You guys already know this. Just accentuating the point for those that might not, be a regular viewer or might not understand what we're getting at. The point is clear. They're trying to deflect from the obvious because they don't know how, let's put it this way. They don't have anything to say. There's nothing you can say because that's what's happening. And their job is to push into but look at the great thing Trump did over here and then lie about that too, because he didn't do that thing.
Middle East right now. Here's what I'll add. Do we or do we not have phase one of a peace agreement in the Middle East right now?
Wait, did she say?
Peace agreement in the Middle East right now.
So phase one. I mean, and don't forget, Israel violated it, hundreds of times just in the first couple of weeks, right? It continues to do so now, has executed people, put the yellow line, won't let them go home, stop food. I mean, it's just over and over and over, which we'll go into the next show. The bodies that were returned were decomposed beyond recognition, means they didn't keep them in refrigerated areas, meaning they stole, and on top of that, they stole all the organs that came back yet again. But peace, though, as they're still being bombed and still suffering and still being tortured, but peace, though.
Nothing is ever going to be perfect, but I'll tell you what, this president works with what he has. He believes in peace through strength. And whether we're talking about in the Middle East, whether we're talking...
Still the same response, by the way, to the obvious question.
...about a 40-year war like Armenia and Azerbaijan, as...
Which is not over. The idea that you argue these things are over is the stupidest comment in the room.
Eric just pointed out a 5-day war in Thailand and Cambodia. This is a president of peace. And sometimes you have to be slightly unconventional with how you get there.
Yeah, the Constitution, pshaw, who cares about those little things? Just brush it all aside and just pretend everything's great, right? Who cares about the foundational elements of what we believe allow this country to exist the way it is? Just put it aside. I mean, that's what they're doing. It's not going to be perfect. You know, maybe we'll make a couple mistakes. Like Elon said in the beginning, major manipulations that were like, maybe we'll make a mistake. They're hoping you give them the benefit of the doubt, that you should never, not even once, ever give a politician the benefit of the doubt. I want you to really think about that for a second. Never. You should always assume the worst and always, though, wait to verify things and expect proof. If they don't, I would assume the worst. They're probably lying to you because in history they have. Don't assume that's the case. But my point is, I mean, I guess that's contradictory. My point is assume the worst in the sense of likely, not that you know for sure, right? But saying that in the common saying of it seems contradictory when you say it in the second part. But the point is always, if you always look at a politician and say he's most likely deceiving me, he's most likely himself being deceived and doesn't know it. One, historically, you're most likely going to be correct. And two, you're not going to giving the benefit of the doubt to somebody who is in a position of power that benefits from the outcome is going to eventually abuse that. I mean, history is rife with examples. But if you assume they're right all the time, you could obviously see the way that will work against you, right? If you're assuming they're wrong, well, you'll be happily surprised when they're right. If you're assuming they're right, they're going to trick you. I mean, let's just say they don't intend to. Somebody will trick them and you'll never even know. I mean, it's quite obvious to see where this goes. These people, by the way, didn't even try to address the question of whether Israel's influencing this government. You know what they're doing. It's very clear what's happening. And it is one of the most obvious parts of this conversation that they are influencing, I think, everything in this country. There is no propagandizing away this growing Israel awareness, guys. It's not going away. The world now finally understands the dark truth about Israel and Zionism. And the U.S. government, all of it, is very worried about that, about what that is revealing about their long history of selling out to it. Now, in regard to Mamdani, a couple points here I want to go over, and then I want to get into the actual claims and so on. This is just funny to me. This is, I just wrote the dumbest people in the room are the most influential in the mainstream conversation today. I really mean that. I mean, it's pretty obvious to see the people that are with the most shallow, partisan, blind takes are the ones that get the most reach on this platform. And I said, talk about two-party illusion, talk about clown world. Here's Cat Turd. Trump's on fire this morning. And it says, any Jewish person that votes for Zohran Mamdani, a proven self-professed Jew hater, is a stupid person. That's the same thing he said about people that calling out that burning the flag, being prosecuted is unconstitutional, pointing out doing things that suppress people online are unconstitutional, and he called them both stupid and, well, it was stupid and something else, stupid people. Meaning that, you know, you're right, and he calls you stupid because you see that he's wrong. In this case, he's calling Mamdani a proven Jew hater. And this appears to be obviously not true based on who knows what he thinks and feels internally, but what he's doing is saying because he supports Palestine, calls out Israel, that's the reality. Could be, but this is always the game they play. Now, I'm going to get into the reality of why I don't think anybody should trust any politician, and especially this person in regard to where this seems to be going. But I want to point this out first. Now, as always, from COVID, what we try to do is argue from within the narrative, right? And what I mean by that is showing, okay, here's something they're saying that I believe is a lie. Then a week later, here's a new thing they say that I believe is a lie. But this new lie contradicts that lie they told a moment ago or a week ago. So I think there's an importance in showing you that, right? So this new lie, even though they're both lies, is proving they were lying before because it can't both be possible. So like with COVID, that's what we kind of do, arguing from within their claims and then showing their new claim proved that first one was wrong anyway, right? That's important. So what I'm saying in this is to think about it from like, okay, let's say he is the person they're claiming he is. Or let's say he does secretly infiltrate for Muslims, like thinking through these, then making points about how even that is being shown to be false because of what they're saying. But first, The Jewish person hating Jews, the common, I mean, you realize, first of all, why they're doing that? Because he's not committing crimes. He's not out there doing anything that is illegal. Now, you are, aside from the argument that there may have been election manipulation, which I'll never push back on, I think it happens every time. That's not the point I'm making here. We'll address that in a second. It's simply that what they're arguing about him being infiltrating and he's going to turn, Sharia law and over there's very little to back up almost everything they're saying about him. Not to say that it's not possible. What I can see is somebody who very much calls out Israel, and that seems to be an obvious, what we just showed you, central problem for the U.S. government, which is being controlled by a Zionist government, in my opinion. And so now you have somebody who's saying bad Israel. And so I'm not saying that the insiders, because I think there's more coordination here than you realize, but the people online, the large influencers that maybe don't understand the bigger game are going, he's a Jew hater, Laura Loomer, he hates Jews, he's a Muslim, because that's the game. But either way, just because he supports Palestine, that becomes the allegation. Now here, and then, as I said, dumbest people in the room, right? To make that point, Libs of TikTok. Trump is dropping truth bombs. Libs of TikTok. Why? Because he says if you vote for him, you're stupid. Truth bomb? the new media. Very intelligent people. But here's the point. I don't think I played this on the show, but I talked about it. I pointed to it. Ian Carroll says, this is insane. It really is. If you remember this was when they were running and what they all had to say about Israel. And it was so forced and so abrasive. I don't know how you can misunderstand this. Well, so watch this. And in regard to the Israel point, and keep in mind that I'm not, in no way am I saying this is the guy we should support. I think all of them are not on your side.
First foreign visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first? Left to right, Ms. Adams.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo?
Holy Land.
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
The mayor of New York. Why in the world you would go anywhere? You think about that for a second. Why would you fly to a foreign country? You're not in the federal government. How does that make sense at all?
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, two of our greatest allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no.
Really quickly. So just to the he hates Jews point, I mean, you're not going to find, as far as I've seen, you're not going to find anything out there that's even close to evidence of that outside of he supports Palestine, therefore he hates Jews. This is the best you're going to get from that as far as I can tell. So right there, he's simply going, I work with the Jewish community. And, so it doesn't seem to be the case. Of course, he could be lying. But this is so wild to me. So ask directly, would you go to Israel? No, I'm going to focus on New York. Obviously a valid point, right? Here's how she forces this in. There's more going on here. I mean, we all know what this comes from.
Their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
What is that? Where would that even come from? Why would that be a point of any kind? Why would a question about a foreign state being able to exist, whatever the context, have any bearing on whether you're the mayor of New York? Think about that. Obviously, you know why, guys, because this is Israel having its say, its influence over even local. I mean, the point is AIPAC and the rest. I mean, they've lost a lot of ability because of how they're overextended and everything that's happening today. But before October 7th, I mean, they were extending as far as they could, even into local everything, sheriffs. I mean, you can see how this has gone as far as it can. And so the fact that they're pushing that, it just shows you the game, in my opinion.
Yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
It gets worse.
Not as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
Wow.
He won't say it has a right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very clear.
His answer.
All of the rest of them jump on him for that because they're trying to win. And they know if they gush over Israel more than anybody, so he says a state with equal rights. I mean, this is like Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter. Do you believe Black Lives Matter? I just said all lives matter. It's like, this is the stupidest thing. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what the right's doing now, whereas it was what the left did before. They're the same thing. In principle, in action, this is the same ideas. All right. They're trying to turn, like, so remember, the left, if you forgot, was trying to say that you're not allowed to say all lives matter because that somehow means you don't think Black Lives Matter. It's just the stupidest part of the conversation. Now you see the same thing happening in reverse. Or I get not in reverse, but just, the same kind of idea. Wouldn't a state with all free rights for everybody, wouldn't that be what you're talking about? No, that's not what they even want, you understand? They're supporting a state for only Jews. I'll show you that again from Netanyahu stating explicitly, no, it's the state for the Jews alone. And then on top of that, if you're an Ethiopian Jew or even slightly not the norm, you're cast aside like you are not part of it. Or an Orthodox Jew who doesn't believe in Zionism. You're beat up every day. So it's about Zionism, if you care to understand.
Was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that.
That's what he was trying to say.
No. Unlike you, I answer questions very directly.
All right.
My goal would be to take my first trip to Israel. My wife's life work in this area means a lot to our family, and it could coincide with my young son Miles' bar mitzvah, if you'd like to have his bar mitzvah.
Okay, but
there's just no misunderstanding any of that, guys. Now, you can make that about Jewish people alone if you want to. It's not the reality. The truth is very clear. This government has overwhelming influence to the point to where you have moderators forcing the acknowledgement of a Jewish state, despite that having no bearing on the point that you're running for or the question itself. You just said, yes, it's state for everybody. That's not enough. You have to make it specifically about Jews alone, even though that wasn't even the question. But you have to, because we know what you're really doing, wink, wink. It's like, it's so alarming to see how far this goes. So here is the clip from Trump. To remember, right? So the whole thing from Mark Levin, the Jew haters, okay. Well, as I've said every time, the way when they're saying that, in most cases, they're talking about people they think, wink, wink, mean that when they say free Palestine. That's not the reality. There's an overlap, but first of all, they could never know that for sure. Secondarily, in my experience, most everybody saying that is fighting for equal rights, for a two-state solution, not for one side, obviously, two-state solution for both sides. That's the reality. Israel's the one that doesn't want that. That's been clear the entire time if you're paying attention. But so my point is that that's usually how they're framing that. But even if you are somebody who just irrationally hates Jewish people, I think that's gross, and you have a right to think what you want. You can say and think what you want, guys. That's what we pretend is this case. So when he's saying that, you can argue he's pointing at Palestine supporters, but either way, he's saying we're going to remove people from this country who have ideas we disagree with. I do this every time, and there's no misunderstanding this, guys. You have to understand this is an absolute core value contradiction of first principles. Just like even discussing deporting American citizens or ICE and the martial law rollout. I mean, every day we see more violations of our rights.
We will remove the jihadist sympathizers and Jew haters. We're going to remove the Jew haters who do nothing to help our country. They only want to destroy our country.
So here is a long thread of this is before he was selected, of his campaign trail with all Israel flags next to American flags every time, because that's normal. And the money he got from Miri Madelson and all different times he told you he would work for their interest, Israeli interest over American interest. And now we're watching that take place and people still ignore it. But keeping this in mind, let's talk about the actual overlap to Mamdani and the election. Now, you know my opinion about this. I don't believe that's not absolute in every possible facet, but I'm of the mind, and it could be, I'm of the mind that our votes do not translate to the outcome. There's a reason that I say it that way. Because you can argue that there's different parts of it that's not complete, or even, who knows. But at the end of the day, whether it's all or no, some or whatever it is, that the outcome, it does not translate to what you all did is what happens. And I think we can prove that. And that's what happens every time is the other side goes, they cheated or this happened or voting machine. I agree with all of it. Not that you could assume it happens every time everywhere, but that we know it happens almost every time to some degree. And I've covered this my entire career doing this. So what's important to think about is that kind of overlap. Again, this is what I'm talking about, arguing from within the narrative. So that being the case from my perspective, that it happens every single time. And at the end of the day, I don't even think that this is what's really going on, that there's somehow some secret element to steal one versus the other. I think long ago, this whole process was taken from us, if it ever was there to begin with. That's just my opinion, but it's rooted in what I think I can prove. But no one, I think, could argue that entirely for sure. So it comes down to what you believe. My point in showing you this is because here's two examples of Elon Musk and other large accounts getting, just like with Venezuela and the last time, putting things out that are false, incorrect, misrepresentations, which then seed the idea that the elections were stolen, even though even Trump's saying the opposite, at least in one case. So Elon says the New York City ballot is a form is a scam. No ID required. No mayoral candidates appear twice. Other mayoral candidates appear twice. Cuomo's name is last in the bottom right. Gen X girl simply says, here's why. Why do you lie so much? You have issues with how New York does their election, then say that. But why do you cause panic by lying? So her point is, yes, there are issues that should be addressed. But you're framing it as if this is deliberate election manipulation, which, again, I do believe happens almost every time, but this does not appear to be one. This guy says IDs aren't required, but address confirmation and signatures are. That is true. Zoran is on twice because he's the nominee for both Democrat and working family parties, which is true. Didn't drop in time. Cuomo lost the primary. Non-major parties are not labeled first. All these are true. So this guy says signature checks are moronic and don't hold up. I agree with that. Not required ID is a major issue. Also agree with that. And she says, I'm all for it, voter ID. Now, I don't know if I agree. I feel like the voter ID level overlaps alarmingly with digital ID and where this is going. My point is from a principle point, or rather what seems to be the most less open for manipulation, I would agree with the point. And she says, I live in a state that requires it. My point is, and this is where I agree with her, if he has issues with the voting process, right, then say it, like the functional issues that may be more ripe for manipulation. But he's insinuating a rigged election because his perverted candidate is about to lose. Elon endorsed Cuomo. I agree with that. So he's using things that are not, this is simply issues that should be corrected versus things that were deliberately done, which is not just this one, you understand? He's playing on the ignorance of individual people. This one got fact-checked even by Twitter. So this guy puts a post out. It says, arrived in New York City 2 days ago. I'm not a U.S. citizen or even a resident, and I was able to get in and vote early. So here's this is why this is so crazy to me. He followed up right away and said, that's a joke, by the way. This is where I took the picture from. Anyone doubting the legitimacy of the election is a moron. Now, I doubt, we should obviously doubt it. Whether it's happening or not, questioning it is what you should do. It's in our interest to question whether it's being, because politicians cheat all the time. But what's funny to me is that he took this and then used this to sort of troll people. And then even this comes out and says that post is a joke as explained by Zoe. Okay. So here is a lot of people, by the way. Alexander Dunnigan, he's a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. And he says, this is exactly how elections are stolen. This man is openly bragging about how he arrived. So you take it at face value without any due diligence? Yes, because that's how partisanship works. And he goes, and is not a resident or a citizen. Yet he was able to still go and cast a vote for Mamdani. It's just, these are children, guys. It's just so sad to see the hyperbolic. Like, if you think that's the case, then make your case. Prove that. Argue that and what you mean by jihadi, that he's a Muslim, right? I mean, it's lazy, bigoted race rhetoric, and it's in the interest of everything other than American interest. But they're wrong, right? So this guy sharing this from a very prominent position who is a candidate for Senate because he just my point is simple, guys, and I think I might have said it. Yeah, I said team sport partisans will share whatever appears to back up their opinion. Simple. Doesn't matter, though, because everyone does it on the partisan side. I don't think that's the majority, though. But so, does this mean there's no manipulation? No, I'm not even getting into that today because I don't even think it's worth verifying from my moment perspective in the show. It is in plenty of other contexts because I do believe it happens. I do believe we all know that. Left, right, as far back as you want to look, you can prove it's been going on. My opinion is the machines themselves have been not just, they've been designed to be cheated for a long time. We keep talking about how they call it out and then no one does anything. They use the same ones every time. Trump says they stole it. And then the same things happen again. I mean, it just makes sense if you have two brain cells to rub together. On top of that, as you know, I don't think they translate to the outcome. So I'm not in the interest of trying to break down the nuance of how something was stolen from something I don't even think exists. I hope that makes sense. Not to say that it might not be important. Do the work yourself, break it down. But I think where we are is that they will lie about anything. So it's impossible to know what you can take at face value. You should question everything, always do your due diligence. But is there actually cheating that took place? Or are we watching one of these gaslighting, astroturfing kind of meme situations take place, like with Venezuela? Well, look at the rigged things. Nope, were mailboxes from 2 years ago. You got caught lying. They do it every single time. Or like this, for example, the White House, which I take as Trump, but who knows who's running it? It's still the Trump White House, and it says the map that the map that made the left cry. Never forget. Okay, well, we've gone over this already. It's a map that looks like, man, look, everything's red in this country. They're all cheating because that's the simplest thing I can take from it, right? They play the dumbest people in the room. Well, I'm not going to say that there's not cheating because I think that there is. But as we said last time, he says it's sad to see the official White House account sharing this stupidity. Land doesn't vote. People do. Here's an animated version of your map, which is true. I've already made this point before, that transitions between county and actual population, meaning that largely the blue areas are where the vast majority of people live. That's usually the cities and everything else. The point is that you could make color in every blank space, which there's going to be some scattered people that live there, as all red. But the truth is the population is minimal compared to these larger cities. That's just the way it is. So I argue that this is broken for a lot of reasons, that this is what the game is played every time. Whether it's from things like gerrymandering, or it's set up for them to manipulate for their benefit, and they're all cheating as best they can. Overall, it just shows you that being misrepresented. Divide and conquer, guys. I think that's how this works. Now here is Caroline Leavitt. And I just think it's the way he frames it, which is pretty close, except he quotes it. And I think it's, you know how I feel about that. The president posted on Truth Social that voting underway in California is rigged. What evidence does he have of that? And she said, there's fraud in California. It's just a fact. What evidence is that of that? Is there? She goes, just a fact. If you want evidence, I'll provide it for you. And doesn't. Now it's kind of what happens, to be honest, but I don't like that it's quoted, but watch the clip for yourself. The argument is you're asking for the evidence, and you're supposed to be doing that this is your job right now. You're supposed to be presenting evidence to show them, or at least giving them the things that you can go to. And she doesn't.
The president posted on Truth Social that the voting underway in California is, quote, rigged. What evidence does he have of that, and what does it mean that mail-in ballots in that state are under legal and criminal review? By whom and why? And also, in this vein, does the White House still plan to issue an executive order banning mail-in voting, and what legal authority do you have to do that?
So first she answers, the point is just to hear, I don't have this tweet, but just remember this because I have other examples. Trump did state on Truth Social that it was rigged, okay? So you have to understand, if he's out here saying this is why we lost and making arguments for why there's an issue with other things that happened, or in the middle of his meeting talking about how the shutdown hurt them, but then otherwise going, it's rigged, he's playing everybody, guys, because he wants that momentum from the mindless followers who are going to do whatever they can to help him because they think it's rigged, but then also addressing the people that are more rational in the room when you can say, who knows what's true, but the point is you can't claim both arguments, right? On top of that, when they said that they were going to be investigating the ballots, well, here we go. Get ready for another 3 years of nonstop investigation that amount to absolutely nothing, whether evidence or not, by the way, just like last time.
White House is working on an executive order to strengthen our elections in this country and to ensure that there cannot be blatant fraud.
Blatant. Make sure there's no blatant fraud, okay?
As we've seen in California with their universal mail-in voting system, it's absolutely true that there's fraud in California's elections.
Yep.
It's just
it's true. It's also true in every other state and federally. Right? So let's remember that. That's easy to understand.
a fact. It is just a fact. They have a universal mail-in voting system, which we know is ripe for fraud. And if you want to
okay, but being ripe for fraud or that's not the same as saying you could prove fraud, right? But see, I don't think she even understands that. Well, the point is that I would agree that there's fraud. It's very it's consistent. But I would argue that you have to prove this if you're going to do anything about it, right? But they never do. So she's saying, yes, we just know it. We just know it. Well, I would agree that it does happen. But that's when you're in this position and you're trying to investigate, well, then you were required to verify what you're saying. I'm not of the mind that they ever want this to go away. Like this is, if you understand the two-party illusion, you understand that by keeping everybody focused on this one thing and everyone fighting each other, they can do whatever they want.
deny that. I'm happy to provide you all of the evidence for it. I'd be glad to send that to you after this briefing.
Oh, what? After the brief? Well, I just asked you now, and you said we know for a fact. Then discuss it. Break it down. So I agree with the way they framed that. How stupid is that? Yes, it's a fact. You want evidence? I'm happy to provide it. Well, that was my question. How about right now?
Rigged.
I'm happy to provide you all of the evidence for it. I'd be glad to send that to you after this briefing.
Rigged.
Fraudulent ballots that are being mailed in the names of other people, in the names of illegal aliens who shouldn't be voting in American elections.
Yeah, I mean, guys, we know this happens. Like, in a general sense, the mail-in manipulation is why it shouldn't be the case. But why they understand this is addressed his first administration. Now he's here again. How much you want to bet it doesn't even change this entire next so many years? It certainly could. I don't think, again, you know my opinion. I don't think it actually translates to the outcome anyway. But the point is having this kind of question mark always works for the power structure, in my opinion.
Countless examples, and we'd be happy to provide them. As for executive action the White House is taking, yes, we are looking into that. And like any executive order, of course, any executive order the president signs is within his full executive authority and within the confines of the law.
Don't you love how stupid she is? So he can sign an executive authority saying he can do whatever he wants anywhere in the world. And apparently that's within his authority because he can do that because he signed it. I mean, think about this again. Look at what she just said.
For executive action the White House is taking, yes, we are looking into that. And like any executive order, of course,
Like any executive order,
the president signs is within his full.
like any executive order he signs is within his authority. I mean, this is the kind of thing where he says, like under Article 2, I can do whatever I want. This is what they're doing, and this is what they seem to actually think. But if we lived in a world where people actually cared, like from the paradigm, not all on one side pretending to fight each other, then this would be insane. You could come out and all of these things. He could be impeached for stuff like this. Not her saying it, but him saying so and acting like he's got upward, Constitution doesn't bind what I can do. These guys are authoritarian. They're dictators, and it's no different than last time. Look at COVID. But overall, this is obvious. You asked for the evidence. You didn't give the evidence. You say, I'm happy to provide the evidence, but there is none. How much you want to bet? Nothing ever comes of that. Now watch, if she doesn't ever give you something that proves that's the case, but just keeps saying, we know we've proven it, like they do every time, then there's probably not proof. Don't assume that either, though, but demand evidence or proof. This is just funny. It's actually right there, too. How funny is that? I can't believe I never noticed that. Look on this picture for the podcast. Whitewashing. That's so perfect for all of them, for KJP, for anybody standing there. It's so the sign behind her is the White House in Washington. And just right, this picture shows whitewashing behind her. I just think that's perfect. Okay. 5 times August. Now here's what Trump said on a different True Social post. The Democrats are far more likely to win the midterms in the next presidential election if we don't do the termination of the filibuster, because it will be impossible for Republicans to get common sense policies. And okay, 3 more years, nothing will be passed. Republicans will be blamed. Elections, you can read all if you want. He's simply saying, well, this is why we lost to a degree. We have to stop this now because we'll lose again. Well, you just said it was stolen in a different post. But you see, this is trying to tap into everybody. They will lose big for a very long time. Importantly, probably it's just, the same kind of stuff you can read through it if you want. 5 times August says, why is he talking like this? Right? Like they're going to take over, right? What's he worried about? I thought there was a big, masterful 5D secret game of chess being played, and he was going to put them all behind bars, right? He's clearly calling it out. He says, what happened to Gitmo? And we have everything, and Patriots in control, and it will all be revealed, and trust the plan and keep your enemies close. Are we doing that anymore? Or why worry about midterms so much? Oh, that's right, because it's all BS. What a perfect thing to frame. He goes, now we're being buttered up for the second coming of the leftist hell, but no patience. It's just there's no denying that. If everything that they were being told was the case, this wouldn't be where you were. Mike Johnson comes out and says, Democrats in New York City have chosen to a true extremist and Marxist. So here's the thing. You have part of their narrative saying they stole it, it's rigged, go after that. Other parts of the same team are saying, this is because Democrats like terrorists, okay? You see, you can't have both. You can't argue that they stole it using their secret manipulation, right? That would mean the team Democrats, but then that the people, the average Democrats in the country, wouldn't then be supported. You couldn't say that they're supporting terrorism because that means they would steal it. The opposite would be true, right? But now they want you to think that they voted for him, and that means they support terrorism. They have their cake and eat it too. They love to take both sides. This is just Israel-type propaganda. So they've chosen a true extremist and Marxist, which, by the way, again, ideology. There's no crime he's outlining here. So what he's saying is, we don't like those mean, bad ideas, even if maybe they are mean, bad ideas. We don't like them. And so bad guy. That's not what we pretend this country is. And he says, and the consequences will be felt all across our entire nation. Because he's in New York, Mamdani election cements the Democrat Party's transformation, to a radical big government socialist party. So like I keep trying to show you, they're not going, these ones are bad, and this group, and the radical Antifa. They're just like Miller and all of them. They're saying the whole thing. Every voter, every Democrat, they're all socialist, radical, terrorist, Antifa Marxists. That's what they're doing. And that's, talk about incitement. This big push they did about trying, and they have a right to say it all they want, guys. That's free speech. But if they want to pretend that saying Nazi or social is or fascist was what it was, that you're inciting to kill people. I mean, look at what they're doing. It's just cartoonish. He says House Democrats endorsed Mamdani's dangerous policies. including defunding the police, seizing private property, and mass tax increases. Well, I disagree with seizing private property and mass tax increases, but is not that's your dangerous radical policies? Defunding the police was a very big push from half the country. Frankly, I think we should defund the government. So not that hard to see it it's not a left policy to think that the government's bad, you understand? See, they're trying to frame it this way. But everything else is very, very normal when it comes to mainstream politics. They're just desperate, guys. And it says now every House Democrat incumbent and candidate will co-own Mamdani's disastrous record in 2026 midterms. Right. So you're telling us that Democrat bad guys are voting in people they don't like. Isn't that what you tell us democracy is? Meanwhile, Republicans are fighting alongside President Trump to lower costs, which they're not doing, though. Make streets safer, which they're I mean, you could argue that they're less crime, but they have military marching down the streets, and that doesn't mean there's no crime. It just means they're not doing crime while the military's in the streets. But it says, and deliver peace through strength. But by the way, on top of that, it's not even really the reality if you look at the general statistics. What you're seeing is certain things changing in certain cases where they're still there after. Just look for yourself. And I do this on the show. Look to my past shows discussing it. And deliver peace through strength, which is not happening. Genocide still happening. Ukraine still happening. He's got some fake things he claimed he put pauses on, which I promise you won't go away. He's just deceiving you. And it says, and just like the Biden and anybody else before, in case I always got to say that for the new people, he says, with exactly 1 year to go until 2026 elections, the contrast between our parties has never been more clear. Divide and conquer, not for the right, not the right to conquer everybody, but for the government and who's controlling it to conquer the American people. Keep you fighting yourselves. Mayor-elect Mamdani's extreme agenda is the future of the Democrat Party, but we will never allow it to be the future of America. All right. Because you're inciting people to go after them in ways beyond politics is what it certainly feels like. But that's the same thing the left does, same thing the right does. They're pushing us this way. And don't forget, Mike Johnson's got over $1 million from the Israel lobby. Now, Mamdani does not, as far as I can tell from certain things, but there's a lot of different overlaps. And here's the point to make before we even get to the end point. Whether it's Israel lobby or anything else, Soros, for example, the way this goes is different today, right? You could, before it was just, even after, first it was just direct, then it became the PACs and the different kind of, they kind of go together, but then that became easy to kind of find where it's coming. The point is today, they go through side groups, right? They go through different organizations like PACs, but now it's been more scattered to ultimately be able to fund along a bunch of different groups and then have them fund to the one person. And so ultimately you can still have a foreign power directly funding a politician. It's not hard to see. Or Soros, for example, doing the same thing. But the point to recognize is you can't argue that Democrats voted them in and that's why they're all terrorists, at the same time argue that it was stolen from you, which both are happening. Here's Clint Russell, somebody who was very, called us black-pilled and purity test before this election, now appears to see it. Sure wish they listened back then. Looks like a clean sweep for Democrats tonight. He said the Republicans might want to start delivering on campaign promises and stop prioritizing foreign countries, which is pretty much what most Republicans think right now. I think that's very important to recognize because it's the truth. And whether that's why this happened or not, or voting, whatever you think, it's true that they're prioritizing a foreign power. Now, this is hilarious to me, showing you the Israel influence on this fake American Yaakov Jacoby guy, who's very much a Zionist, Israel blind. The point is acting against American interests. He says Hamas is literally congratulating Mamdani. Oh, what he means is a Palestinian journalist who has very clearly been identified. Like, this is a guy you can easily, we've been highlighting his work for a long time. They just simply go, they're all Hamas, and act like they're not trying to ethnically cleanse the entire area. No, this Israeli journalist who's been doing this prolifically for a long time now says congratulations for the free people winning the mayoral election. I have much more to say, but congratulations is enough for now. Okay, I don't see anything about Hamas. I don't see anything about any of that. RIP New York City. I mean, these are lunatics. What they're doing right now is insane to me. Now, I don't support any side of the government, but what they're doing is trying to convince one part of it that this is something like, here's what's wild about it. When we can see Israel doing what they're doing in this country, and most every American can see it too, they're trying to flip it on its head and convince you that this is somehow Muslims, Qatar, just, or I guess Muslims at large, whatever that means to them, invading and taking over everything, even though that's not even remotely what's happening. And you can, an objective look makes that undeniable. But I'll get to the point about this in a second. Ted Cruz. I showed you this before. This seems like an easy one. This is before the election. Just think about this. He says a Democrat, and it says just a Democrat. But then this one says an actual communist jihadist, a literal Karl Marx quoting American-hating jihadist. American-hating as he presents ideas that he argues will better the country. You could argue he's lying about it, but see, this is just them trying to argue that we don't agree with his ideas and then saying he secretly wants to destroy everything so bad ideas. As always, they're not really what they claim to be. These people want to censor you based on concepts, on free speech, or rather on hate speech. But I said this really does reveal the game. If, in the very midst of their all Democrats are terrorist push, that they're willing to tell you to vote for a career Democrat. I mean, he is a hardcore Democrat operative, guys. One of the most obvious. But if they tell you to do that simply because he is calling out Israel, then it tells you this is really about Israel. Now, that's just about the surface level point of it all, right? Two-party illusion. Terrence Williams says, impeach and deport Zohar Mamdani. Oh, deport him now. Okay. He is a threat to our country. And see, this is what is happening. Now, whether Terrence believes this or just sees the writing on the wall and thinks that I have to scream these contentious things because that's what the team wants. Now, I don't mean the team as in all the people. I mean the team as in the power structure he's pandering to every day like a complete clown. He's a threat to our country and he lies on his citizenship paperwork. Okay, prove it. Make a case, present your evidence. If that's the case, then do something about it. The fact that nothing happened shows you these people are just screaming about a person they disagree with, just like the left, Terrence. You're just like the left, bud. You are the left. Rather, the left in the sense that you call them. The point is you are a mindless following team sport partisan that will go after people because of their ideas, call for censorship because of ideas. You're a broflake. You're the woke right, guys. That's what this is. Republicans get to work. Right. Impeach him. Okay, go for it. First, maybe impeach any president ever for all the crimes they continue to commit, whether it's Biden or Trump. But realistically, if you want to impeach him, go for it. Present your case, show the evidence of your claims. The reality is if they had evidence that he was doing any of these things, this would have come out a long time ago. A threat to our country and deport. So now you're talking about an elected politician who has citizenship in this country, who is going to be, you're calling for deporting him? You see, this is where we get to the U.S. point, where they're going to make an argument for why a U.S. citizen is not really a U.S. citizen the moment that they're actually having wrong ideas. It's just sad. The people that are, with American flags and patriots and all this stuff, and they're the least America first people I can see. Wall Street Mav. After this, he goes, I'm convinced more than ever that we need Trump to accelerate mass deportations no matter what. Right, no matter what. He says, I don't care what ICE has to do to achieve it. Oh, so you're a complete hypocrite, right? You're a complete hypocrite. You're saying you're going to allow violation of our rights? Yes. I don't care what it takes to achieve it. It's worth it. Okay. So what if Trump has to murder Americans in the streets? Well, I don't care what they need to achieve it. Okay. What if they have to bomb Florida? I don't care. You could argue that's too extreme, right? That's literally what he says. I don't care what ICE does to achieve it. These people don't have principles. They're literally showing you that they don't have principles. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get their idea done because they've been convinced somehow that it's the best thing whatever the narrative is. Some of them don't care. Some of them believe the nonsense. At the end of the day, if you're arguing that we can do whatever we want to get there, then you're a child in the room. You're a hypocrite. And he says, we need as many illegal aliens deported as we possibly can to achieve in the next 3 years. Okay, if they're illegal aliens, you could deport them anyway. So the game is do everything around that. And on top of that, he's pointing to one person who was already elected and two new people who were elected who are Muslims. So you get two new Muslim politicians and the whole thing melts down on the right in regard to the team sport politics. Meanwhile, you've got Israel funding 96% of the country, or rather, whatever. What was the last quote from AIPAC? 90-something of every side of all politicians in the country. 250 of them fly to Israel for 50 states, one Israel. I mean, and this is what you worry about, guys? These people are not on your side, or they're too lost in their partisan ideas to take a step back and realize what's happening. And of course, when you align with Laura Loomer, you're not in a good place. She says, we have a major Islam problem in America. Just so you're clear, guys, that means Muslim. She's saying you're not allowed to believe in Muslim ideology or Muslim religion. You're not. That's what she means. They're trying to make it into something that seems terroristic. And that's what Islam is, guys. Islam, the religion of the Muslims. Okay. So when she says that, she's just saying Muslims are bad, which she's not even trying to hide. In a country that we argue is allowing a freedom of religion, I mean, why is nobody even addressing that in the mainstream conversation? And she says the GOP, so all of the mainstream Republican side, refuses to address it because the entire party is influenced by Qatar. I mean, how do you not see that as desperation? I think about how stupid this is. Like, so you could argue Qatar is influencing plenty, but first of all, recognize Qatar as an extension of the Israeli agenda. On top of that, recognize that you can, if you want to make the case, compare it to the Israel lobby, not just one thing, but all of it, not just the ones that you argue, like AIPAC, for example, is not a U.S. entity. That's part of their foreign lobbying influence, but there's plenty of them that aren't even acknowledged. On top of that, there's plenty of stuff Israel does that's just straight up overtly illegal that we don't talk about. But she's saying that to argue because to deflect from the obvious, I think. The Islamic takeover of America is in full swing. I mean, think of it, just compare it for yourself. You ask yourself that question. New York City, Virginia, Minnesota. Right. Okay. Boom. So the one that was already there, 2 new people got elected, and we're screeching about how that's a problem for all Muslims over the entire country. I don't think Americans understand how dangerous and violent our country is going to become. Why? Because 2 Muslims got elected? Like, this person is the grossest person on this platform. I've said that. I'm not being hyperbolic, guys. She is insanely disgusting and one of the worst people I've ever had to look at online. She is telling you that they are just so gross because they believe Muslim religion, that they're going to cause violence and hurt everybody and crash planes and just stupid, lowbrow. Like, this is not what journalism is. On top of that, talking about stupid, lowbrow non-journalism, here's Tim Pool. This person, Eric Dougherty, on the same conversation, goes, it's official. New Yorkers forgot. What? Forgot? What? Are you now claiming that Muslims attacked us on 9/11? Are you that stupid, Eric? Not even your own party believes that, man. See, these people are the mainstream media. That's what they are. That's exactly what every other mainstream media does. Fox, CNN, Eric, Nick Sorter, Benny Johnson, Alex Jones. These are mainstream media. Muslims attacked us 9/11? Eric, I'd love for you to flesh that out. And of course, he says they forgot because they elected Mamdani. Was he on 9/11? So now any Muslim in the world is now responsible because you claim they were there? I mean, worthy of ridicule. And Tim Pool, because he just jumps in because that's what he does these days. Whether he believes it or not, he waits for those openings and this guy is an opportunist. And he goes, no, they were conquered. Ooh, you're so edgy, Tim. You took it a little further. It's embarrassing. And is Tim arguing Muslims attacked us in 9/11 and now Muslims conquered our country? I'd love for you to flesh it out in a show, Tim. Why don't you have Tim Horton on? Talk about it. That'll work out well. Well, here's the thing I think is most important in all of it. Until we recognize and acknowledge the 2-party illusion, nothing will truly change. That's my opinion over all of what we talked about so far. Here's Alex Soros. So proud to be a New Yorker. American dream continues. Congratulations, Mamdani. Okay, that doesn't prove that there's anything going on. But here's the thing. As you can look into it, like I was saying the first part about Israel, which I know is part of it, which I'm arguing that Israel's probably finding ways to influence him financially, just like everything else. But if you look into it, Soros directly does not appear to have any direct donations to his campaign. But you can easily show that the Soros foundations and different things have very clearly, like I said, scattered around their funding through multiple administration or multiple organizations. So yes, he does. But that's arguably no different than any other group funding here and there. I argue, though, that anything like this does have an effect. Not that I would say that you just because of the picture, because of the funding, that proves this is happening. But my opinion is they're all compromised, guys. All these politicians are working for the mainstream agenda. He is too. Now, whether he means what he's saying about Israel or not, we'll have to find out. There's plenty of Jewish people in our country that very much support him who are blindly adherent to supporting Israel. So that the Jewish part's not the main issue. It's about the fact that they are ardent Zionist Jews who support Israel and are supporting him. That doesn't make much sense to me. But he has been calling it out. He has been very much calling out Israel, and I think that's an issue for the mainstream team sport politics people. But I think at the end of the day, this works for the larger ADL Israel Zionism agenda because of what people like Loomer are doing. And maybe that's the whole point. But like I said, this guy with his stated policies wants to grow the government in how it exists in your life. Wants more government involvement, wants more program. I don't want that. I want less government in every possible sense in all of our lives. So I want you to think about that when people try to argue that we're somehow supporting one side of the, I don't support any of them. But I also think that this person is somebody who is challenging to some degree what average people see as the partisan game But what he does is what matters, right? As we see this go forward, let's wait and see what he does and discuss it. The idea that we would scream about his thoughts and his feelings and everything, like Loomer and the rest, they're hyperbolic, clutching their pearls and screaming about how it's all going to come down. Yeah, maybe. No different than what Israel's doing right now. No different than what our current administration is doing to collapse the country. Pay attention. Watch what he does. Hold his feet to the fire, especially if you support him. But I think that he's tapping into the same two-party game. He is a Republican, or he claims to be. He is very much tapped into the growing of the government more. Even when it comes to war, how much you want to bet that when it comes down to it, he will end up supporting one thing or the other. Just my opinion. I know I'm jaded. I know that I am skeptical. I think we have every right to be. But I believe where this goes is just more of the same. Now, what David Icke pointed out, or Adam says, should be much more obvious now. Trump killed MAGA. Now, you can argue it was stolen. Again, election cheating is obvious. But like plenty in the team, especially even Trump himself, the argument is that they lost this for certain reasons. So if you think of that, then that would be him essentially killing MAGA with his aggressive policies for Israel, growing the government, spending more, basically the opposite of everything they promised, except all the team players on Twitter are going, promises made, promises kept. Just think about how embarrassing that is right now for all the people that are conservatives that aren't dumb, that aren't dishonest. They're going, that's just not true. No, Trump, grocery prices are not way down. He just said it again. David Icke, it is good that voters rejected Trump's chaotic tyranny. But before anyone gets too excited, this is just another change of the one-party state from right to left, right, left, right, left. On and on it goes when both parties are ultimately controlled by the same forces. It's theater to keep you in the voting booth, believing it makes any fundamental difference. See, this is where we really have to get to. Even people that see this get pulled in. That's what I'm talking about in the like the libertarian side of the people that were calling certain things out and they get kind of sucked into the left-right paradigm. People like Luke, for example, the other day, who acts like they see through it, but then still goes, we have to do this in the midterms. They're either deliberately pretending they're outside of it to trick you, or they think they are, but are still tapped into the left-right paradigm. David Icke sees it, right? Plenty of people out there see, well, this is what we need to get to. Even if you disagree with, if you think some of them are fighting for us, getting yourself to this mindset is still in your interest, because then you are expecting the reality, and then you're surprised in a positive way by somebody doing something real. It says theater to keep you in the voting booth. Hopium is a potent drug and reveals the ongoing power of the hope over experience. When people cease to be divided and ruled and cease to think that their cult tyranny is better than the other cult tyranny, we might have a chance of realizing that a few cannot control billions unless the billions give their power away to the few. Politics is the way that they do so. 100%. So I'm sure plenty of people might have expected to jump in and be like, a win for, that's a win against Israel. I just don't feel that way. I don't feel like supporting any of these people is going to be in your long-term interest, but I will support what I think is their positive policy. Like when Gabbard was saying positive things, I'm good. I like that. But then she obviously went the other direction. Plenty of them do this. So I hope for the best, expect the worst, as we all should. But just to wrap up that one point on this, guys, I think where this goes, Mamdani, we'll have to wait and see what his actions are. But the way that the team players act around it, like what it reveals about the U.S. dynamic, is everything happening is based on hyperbolic, like cartoonish framing to kind of like overwhelm the other side or scare people away. And what's interesting is, again, if you look at the people who vote, the people that engage with what I think is an obviously broken system, even half of them see it in certain parts of the time. The point is that those who are less than 40% of the country are the people who are lost within the partisan lie. So it's the people who are the least informed in the room, it seems, are the ones that are engaging with this process every time. That's just how it seems to me. And so we are watching this play where they're kind of, my point, I guess, is they're using the Mamdani types to get you reinvested, to keep people kind of distracted from, like, again, hating the other side. Because you realize his thing is coming in saying the same kind of thing about the reverse, about how the right side of it is basically the other, right? The ones that are destroying what we're fighting for. And so it comes down to this ideological divide, which will be exploited so they can continue their foreign escapades, so they can continue stealing your rights away and driving in martial law and the technocratic future. Now, I hope I'm wrong, as always, but what he does will make all the difference, right? In the sense of, we'll be able to see one way or the other. Now, on this point, we have Venezuela, and you might have noticed it's been happening almost every day. Daily occurrence now. Casual terrorism from the U.S. government. Nothing new, which is true. But as I think it was Jason Bassler rightly points out, the plus side is they're documenting all their war crimes. But again, every day. Now, I wanted just to quickly show you this before we finish with the FBI point. This is kind of wild to me. So this is a recent clip that was put out on the 3rd. This is, of course, it's so funny. People that use this non-ironically cracks me up. It says more winning. It's just so embarrassing. Apparently that's them. You know, it's like funny how we're winning because we're doing the good things. Do you buy that? It says U.S. military captures another drug speedboat, captures and seizes over 5,000 pounds of drugs and apprehends nearly 60 narco terrorists. Okay. Well, again, we don't have any evidence, but here's what's interesting to me. Today, at the direction of President Trump, it says a lethal strike was carried out in a vessel. This is on the 4th. The next day, right? So this is on the 3rd or days before. So far we've gotten, 8? And they've all been bombed. And they say drugs, we have drugs and terrorists and drugs. And no, we don't, it's all at the bottom of the ocean. Sorry. Okay. And then for whatever reason, they actually seize this one and arrest them all. And what do you know? There's drugs. You have to think about this for a second. Why wouldn't they have bombed it like all the others? If you're telling us they've got 5,000 pounds of drugs, why wouldn't they have bombed it? I mean, the point is clear. It's what they've done every other time. Why did they not do it this time? Well, my opinion is that they knew they were drugs and they wanted to be able to go, see, there's drugs. Which would suggest that the others they're bombing have nothing to do with that. Now, that's just my opinion. I would argue, like I said before, it's most likely that some of these are doing that. I mean, there is a drug trade that goes on, and they're a part of it, to be honest, the U.S. government. But isn't this a strange deviation? And the next day they go right back to bombing a boat? Well, okay, then the next day, why didn't they seize that boat instead of killing everybody on the boat and not leaving any evidence? Now, I'm going to wait to see if this even fleshes out. They call it Operation Pacific Viper with any evidence. This seems to me to be something completely different than what they're doing with the boats that they've been bombing. I think this is a way to try to pretend that every other one has any drugs. And even if the point is they should be required, which they are, to prove it every time anyway. Isn't that just a weird deviation? Now here is Chad Prather saying the U.S. military snagged another narco speedboat. In what? You mean other than bombing all the other ones? It's like they're trying to convince you that they've been doing this in every one of them. There's a game of trying to, this is the adherence to the narrative versus all the facts. It's what people are doing in politics today. Whether he even knows that, I don't know. Not just law enforcement, that's giving the bad guys a one-way ticket back to reality. You mean in this one example versus the others where they bombed everybody? It doesn't make any sense. Well, here's what Trump said. As David DeCamp says, he thinks you're stupid. Every time we hit a narco trafficking vessel, we save 20,000 lives. That's what he just said. It's wild what we're doing right now, guys. What's happening there is illegal. Everybody, Ron Paul, anybody with any principle is telling you it's unprecedented. Same with Rand Paul, by the way. Same with Massey. Same with all the real people that have America First principles. Now, speaking of lack of principles, here's Kash Patel. War-focused peace president, Gaza AI drones, good stuff to watch in this last show, but also Kash's FBI false flag. There's the show we just did. Now, this is just going to be some updates on where we are with this story. First, I wanted to reiterate the things that came out early, which appears to still be where we are. And think about how weird that is now that it's when this was on the 31st, it's now the 6th. A group of people who allegedly chatted online about an ISIS-inspired attack went to a shooting range with AK-47s, no crime there, practiced high-speed reloads, no crime, and made a reference to Pumpkin Day. And that's when they jumped. Okay, that's the framing to start. What you'll see is that everything we're talking about outside of the allegations of ISIS connections and planning an attack, which is yet to flesh out, everything in this are legal actions that only seem weird when you look at it through the lens of ISIS terrorism attack. An FBI undercover person was introduced into the chat room in early stages. Every single time FBI get involved, organize, engineer, even fund and drive and provide the materials for an event, and then try to stop them. In some cases, they don't do it, then they charge them with planning the attack that they literally orchestrated. This is not good. I brought this up in the last show. If it's right here, no, it's the old ones here. I had it earlier, I think, but I'll grab it just in case. Because the point is, I want you to watch this show and understand how prevalent that is. And I'll even just grab this one. This will probably pop up. Yeah, right here. Intercept article. Why does the FBI have to manufacture its own plots if terrorism and ISIS are such grave threats? Glenn Greenwald. I'll include that one. The last show, though, we did quite a few. We went over, I had like 7 different examples from our site, from other sites. Oops, that's the wrong one. Here's the last show. Oh, I'm stupid. I literally just closed it. It's in the show notes. That's the show right there. So when they have somebody in the chat, you have to understand this is what they do. They've been doing this. The New York Times wrote about this a while ago. The participant discussed whether to carry out an ISIS-inspired plot. Now, what that looks like will change everything, right? So hypothetically, if it's going, let's go to that parade on Pumpkin Day and have a great time, and they're like, wink, wink, we know what that language means, whatever that comes out, that's what they tend to do. If it's let's go do something like that ISIS video we saw, well, that would change the conversation, wouldn't it? I doubt that's the case. The point is they've yet to release anything like that. Like, remember with Tyler Robinson and the rest, when they released the information, we tear through it and we go, look at even the chat doesn't line up with what they're saying. On top of that, you can't even verify these chats came from where they claim they did. So what do they do now? They just go narrative. Shut up. That's what Trump does. That's what seems like Cash is doing so far anyway. Okay. Oh, and then this last part. The participants discuss whether to carry out a plot, and it says, quote, though what that plot was, when that plot would be, what the target would be, was unclear as they discussed various options. So you didn't know what the plot was, right? You didn't know when it would be. You didn't even know what the target would be. But somehow you think there's a plot? How does that even make sense? Well, if something comes out that lines it all up, then we'll point it out. Right now, it seems to be yet another manufactured event with very little evidence. Now, don't forget, their lawyer came out, which they might, as they commonly do, and said, look, there's no evidence. This is crazy. I tend to agree, but we'll have to wait and see. This went around before we get into the final covering of where it is now. And funny enough, I was just talking about this. I didn't share. I did what I was talking about and retweeted it instead of using the link. And now it's gone. It says post unavailable. It does appear it was deleted, but I just want to make that point. Reminder, myself included, try not to do the retweet, try to grab the link and use it, because overall, if this kind of thing happens, you can't the link's gone. There's no evidence. Like, even I couldn't even grab the link and then try to use the Wayback Machine because they won't give you it. It deletes it, right? But I said below is how stupid they think we are. Here's what it was. Thank you to Orwell for saving this. Sarah says, ISIS is threatening New York City today. If you still think appeasing terrorists will make them stop, you clearly haven't gotten the memo. This was all pushed to get you to go against Mamdani, or at least from the Twitter side of it, right? To go, he's terror, here's bad guy. So Operation Manhattan Project. Yeah, because, the ISIS public, PR group put out their public relations post. It's just so stupid. Remember, we're going to get into this right now, right? The reality of where ISIS comes from. But guess what? It was fake. Surprise, surprise. And it got deleted. It got fact-checked and deleted because that's what they do. And that was what got deleted. But here is all the usual suspects screaming about it because they don't check anything. Because they go, oh, that aligns with what I want to say. Blast it out. We just talked about that. That's what they do. She says, the Muslims can't think of a better way for the Muslims to celebrate the victory of a Muslim mayoral candidate today than by committing an ISIS attack. This is what we pretend. This is what the team sport, the mainstream alternative media, the new media pretends a journalist is today, right? Somebody who the Muslims can't think of a better Muslim way to Muslim. She's crazy. On top of that, it's all false. So she takes a fake thing that isn't actually happening and screams her hatred for Muslims without any due diligence. You know what that means? She hates people for no reason. That's what that means. Here is Sean Ryan's show, the CIA show, right? And he goes, FYI. The link that's gone. And now he actually shared it. So you can see that I can include that actually. Here's the deleted link in case that matters for you. But that was the one I showed you earlier. And says, look, fake news. They don't care. They share it because it aligns with their ideals. That's what they do. And look, good on Kimberly for calling this out. I'll save that. I'll come back to it. But here is some of the stuff I want you to remember, guys. So what are they saying? An ISIS-linked plot, right? Okay, well, the first part should be to recognize that ISIS is a group that Israel and the United States have literally created and ran and armed and moved around. I could give you a 6-hour show of all the evidence. In fact, I'll just reference, like I usually do, James Corbett's amazing work, False Flags, The Secret History of Al-Qaeda. It's a very good, I'll include our watch through of all 3 parts with Corbett, myself, and Brock West. But I mean, the reality is if you watch this and literally watch and pay attention and look at the source material, which is provided for every single claim, There's no denying this, guys. This is an undeniable reality. Ben Swan did a documentary about the ISIS part of it, which Al-Qaeda just morphed into ISIS, like I played the clip. But this is Israel-U.S. manufacturing. So when you have the overtaking of Syria and you see ISIS members working on behalf of the U.S. and Israel in Syria, like you can see the picture of, which you can verify with the reverse image, like TINI, for example. That was in Syria. They were the ones working for Israel and the United States. The other one is an ISIS member executing Alawites, I believe. And you can prove this. Now, you can see Israel working with Jelani. Same with the United States. Here's an example of ISIS-linked groups. Here, I'll grab this too. That one's a good one to include. Where Israel says, hey, what's wrong with that? We can work with ISIS because that's working with our agenda. Yeah, that's what they do. This is Haaretz. What's wrong with that? How Israel trained and armed an ISIS-linked Gazan militia affiliated with ISIS. It's not a secret, guys. Nobody talks about it within the controlled U.S. conversation. So the point is they're working with ISIS groups or even ISIS-linked groups, just like they're saying ISIS-linked plot in Gaza. And they know they're doing that. Think about how stupid this is with them now saying this. I'm not saying that because they work with them, it shouldn't matter there's someone else doing a bad thing. My point is to show you that this is something they are doing. Whether or not this is even the case with the people from Dearborn, Michigan. And here's Ron Paul calling out Trump for like the third time on this conversation. The insanity, he says, of U.S. foreign policy in a nutshell that self-styled Syrian president al-Shara or Jolani is to be welcomed by the White House. Here's Trump shaking his hand. That is the leader of an al-Qaeda group. Just before his U.S. aid rise to power in Syria last year, he was the head of the local al-Qaeda branch. This is Ron Paul, the one they pretended they were going to work with because they tried to trick all of you to support Trump. Before that, al-Shara worked with al-Qaeda in Iraq and is responsible for the death of numerous U.S. service members. America first. That's your reality right there, guys. Oh, and don't forget, just for humorous overlap, 6 times Trump claims he defeated ISIS. But now we're fighting back an ISIS plot because it all makes sense, right? This chapter shows that despite Trump's claims to the contrary, he did not entirely defeat ISIS. The stupidity of the world we're in today, that you have to do an Oxford study to prove that he's lying about something that didn't happen. Man, the world is broken today. But here is where Mamdani is. Our newly unsealed complaint reveals. Unsealed complaint. Okay. We're not dealing with an indictment despite all the stupidity online. Blind assumption. It is a criminal complaint, which makes a huge difference. And I'm not saying it because she wrote that. I'm saying it because you can prove it. The newly unsealed complaint reveals a major ISIS-linked terror plot. Well, no, all it does is literally state what you believe. There's no evidence. It's quotes from Twitter, for crying out loud. I'll show it to you. And it says in Michigan, of course, that's clearly an agenda they're building. According to the complaint, subjects had multiple rifles, not a crime. Tactical gear, not a crime. And a detailed plan to carry out an attack on American soil. Well, that's yet to be revealed. You haven't even fleshed out what that is. You said in the first statement you didn't even know where, when, or how. So how exactly can they have a detailed plan? Thanks to the extraordinary diligence of our U.S. attorney, FBI's local enforcement, this plot was stopped before we lost lives. Or they didn't do that at all. Our American heroes prevented a terror attack. Here's what's weird. Here's the link she shares. Oops, it's gone. See, there's one of two things I think about this. Either they're deliberately putting out links they change, so then when you ask Grok, for example, it can't find the link, which happens often, or they edited it and changed it because they're ridiculous and constantly lying to everybody. Either way, her major post that's cited by all these platforms for the evidence of this claim links to a dead page. That's where we are today. So here is Grok. Has the FBI indicted anyone for the events of October 31st and the claimed ISIS-linked plan? Grok says, yes, the FBI has indicted individuals. Here's the information. Okay. See, this is why it's important to know what you're talking about, not blindly take Grok at face value. So, read through it. Okay. Everything they list are things that they're stating nothing's been proven. Nothing, because they're only stating things, and I'll make this case very clear for you. They're going, this happened, this happened, this happened. And then Grok and others point to that statement as the proof that it's happening. Typical, right? Well, I said, well, give me a link to the official press release. I'd like to see the indictment. Okay, link here. And I said, well, that's a criminal complaint, not an indictment. It is, and I'll show you again in a second. Oh, whoops, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan, you're correct. The criminal complaint is not the same as an indictment. In federal cases like this, a complaint is an initial charging document filed by prosecutors, often with an arrest warrant to initiate proceedings, not an indictment, right? If they haven't even, this requires a jury to look over the evidence. The point is, this is just the beginning. They're charging them, they're criminal complaint with charges. There's no pleas because there's not even a federal, as far as I understand it, there's no plea necessary because it's a federal level and it's a complaint charge. It's still a complaint, a criminal complaint. It still has to go further into the investigation for them to then indict, and then that will happen. See how interesting this is? But so the point is, yes, it is a criminal complaint, and no, that it's not an indictment. That changes everything. But even that is what's being said by Grok. So here on the 3rd, multiple suspects charged for having firearms and conspiracy to provide material support to ISIS. Well, even that statement changes the overall point. Oh, so you're not in a plot to attack. Your argument is you were conspiracy to support an attack. Okay, well, at least the first 2 suspects. This is where I think, just like the Dallas point where it ended up being people that they claim they had no idea what's going on. A third person that they don't have any connection to was there and shot somebody, and they claim that's their group and their organization. And they're going like, we didn't even have any part of that. We didn't know what was happening. Seems like a CIA Mossad element stepping in and executing somebody and then blaming the group, which seems to how this tends to work these days. Just a possibility. In this case, what if this was something that was executed by somebody else who was not part of the group, was in the chat room, or rather the plan, and ultimately these guys had no idea about it. And all of the plot is about one guy saying one thing. I mean, this is, we have to find out, right? So when this actually comes to pass and they do release evidence, we'll be able to dive through it. But it says, last Friday, the FBI arrested multiple suspects and took them into custody. They have now been charged for having firearms that would be used in a conspiracy. So guess what? About firearms. That's it. It's about the use of firearms and whether those would be used with some kind of an act. Not about a terrorist attack, not about a plot with ISIS. It's about firearms. They're including the support for ISIS to make this a bigger case. It says the complaint sets forth grievous allegations of a radical Islamic terror plot involving AR-style rifles, shotguns, handguns, and other tools for tactical assault. The complaint. This newly unsealed complaint. So here they are quoting what they wrote. This is what she wrote on Twitter. That's what I just read to you. So now they're in the practice of, in their official documents from the attorney's office, using the quote from Twitter as, I mean, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. Lack of decorum, lack of process. These guys don't even know what's supposed to happen, it feels like. You can't point to your Twitter statement as the evidence to make the claim. That's redundant. It doesn't make any sense. But it goes on to say, I read it for you already. According to the complaint, they had multiple AR rifles and so on. Now it says, with today's unsealed criminal complaint, the American people can see the result of months of tireless investigative work. No, we can't. You just go, they did bad things and plot, and we knew it. That doesn't prove anything. We don't see any investigative work. There's no process. And it says, we are thankful for the exceptional work of the FBI. Okay, that's all you get, guys. You get a tweet she put out, you get their statements about it, and then that's it. The investigation's ongoing. A criminal complaint, it says right here, is merely an allegation. And all defendants are presumed innocent until proven. Yeah, not in the Republican game, though. Tyler Robinson's been guilty since they caught that old guy first. That's how it works. Well, here's the other one, which is weird because it came from Office of Public Affairs, which says the exact same title and does the exact same thing. A little bit longer, but just want to point out, last Friday they arrested them. Her tweet post with today's unsealed, I guess it's the same length exactly, actually. That's all it is. Same exact post. There's nothing other than their statements. That's it. Okay. Third suspect arrested and charged along with 2 current defendants for conspiring to provide material support. See, not providing support, but talking about maybe providing support for something that didn't even happen. If that's actually, so to me, that's going to be subjective. They're going to have something they claim is what was about to happen based on the words they were using. There's no way around it. And having firearms that would be used to commit the act. Yes, you have guns. You're allowed to, because that's not a crime in this country to own a gun, but it is when they claim you're a terrorist. So same point. Today, the FBI arrested a third person. And then their quotes, and that's it. These aren't changing anything. This is them stating things. Okay, Politico. Justice Department files charges against 2 men accused of plotting ISIS-linked Halloween attack. That's on the 3rd. The Department of Justice has filed charges against 2 people from Michigan for alleged ISIS-linked terror plots that investigators say the group of men planned to carry out over Halloween. And we listed their names before. It was Ali and Ahmed last names. They face charges of receiving and transferring and attempting to conspire to transfer firearms and ammunition, knowing and having reasonable cause to believe the firearms and ammunition will be used to commit a federal crime. Oh my God. So what you're saying is receiving, buying guns? Okay, that's not a crime in this country. I'm sure your team will love that. Transferring, which didn't happen, you understand, because they didn't transfer them. They were their guns that they were using. They claimed they were about to, and it says, and attempting to conspire to transfer. So if it didn't even happen, you haven't transferred them, where does that first part come in? And it says, knowing it and having a reasonable cause to believe that they might be used to commit a crime. And this is the big terror plot they shut down. General Mamdani said it was the work of American heroes. The complaint states that agents were monitoring at least one co-conspirator as of last summer. Okay, I think this is where it probably comes to play. Who is this one lone co-conspirator that they were watching before these other guys in the chat room? Or otherwise, you could think of it as cultivating this guy first. Okay, so he's the one that they bring in who ultimately ends up doing it that they blame these other guys for, and they're the two that they really go after from Dearborn, Michigan as Muslims. That's what it feels like to me. It said the encrypted communications. Now, I'm running short on time. I'm simply just going to point out, guys, when you read through this, they have guns, they have tactical backpacks, ammunition. I mean, look, if you go look at anybody, like myself, anybody, guys, the idea of people, for example, stocking up on a bunch of ammunition, like you can think that sounds crazy, but everybody was doing that during the pandemic. If you went to go try to buy rounds at a place, everything was out. Everything was wildly expensive because people were stocking up. That's the way it works. It's not a crime, regardless of what they want to make it into. Now, those things could mean something else, but it also could just mean people I have a tactical vest. I have all sorts of stuff, guys. It doesn't mean you're a criminal, but that's where they're building this into. Now, the next one is from the 5th, from the Detroit Free Press. Latest terror suspect linked to video game lawsuit over stolen loot. It says 3 more men have been arrested and alleged in this Halloween terrorism plot. This is sprawling into more people. I'm not sure how this connects just yet because they haven't released anything. It says, including a Dearborn man who was being sued by makers of popular video game Fortnite. The main point for me to get to it. So they're saying they have nothing to do with any of this. Like the people aren't even connected. So unless there's evidence, it seems like they're just picking out a different Muslim guy from Dearborn and saying that they were doing it. Hard to know because they're not releasing any information. It says Mr. Nasir does not have any involvement in the recent investigation and complaint that came through pertaining to the alleged terrorism plot. He has no involvement in the case. No, lawyer could lie. It says he was basically held that the accused had merely video gamers who talk tough online, had no planned intention to attack, which makes sense to me. Happens all the time. These guys are blusters. People online, especially gamers, podcasters, guys, people do it all the time. Meanwhile, and that's why words are words, crimes are crimes, guys. That's free speech. Meanwhile, 2 more men are reportedly arrested in New Jersey for alleged ties to a Michigan terror case. Ties to a case that didn't even happen, right? So now you have a case that you claim was a terror case. Now you're finding connections to that abstract parts of the case. So here's a guy who sold them ammunition. Now you're part of the case. We haven't even verified that this thing even happened or was even going to happen. Again, history shows how long the FBI, how many times they've been caught trying to manufacture a case. But here, where was it? I have one more thought. I'm going to keep going for time. It says, according to NBC News, 19-year-old from New Jersey was arrested. It's the next one. I was going to make, I'm trying to hurry. I'm going to make one point. They're saying that they plan to work with ISIS and stuff. I mean, again, to find what proves that, right? Or if you're going to say they said that, then show us where it says that and then prove that you got it from that chat room. Other than that, I don't trust the FBI. New Jersey and the Dearborn man landed an FBI radar following a year-long investigation involving an undercover FBI informant. Weird. Because it's not like that ever happens every single time, no matter what. And I'm not saying it's wrong for people to investigate, but the point is every time you find this early involvement where they're the ones that provided the materials and had the idea and tried to push them to it. I'm not even making that up. And they say simply because they were willing to do it at the end of all of that they're the ones. And half the time people are just blustering, like we said, going, yeah, well, let's do it. Then they're behind the scenes going, yeah, that guy's crazy, and then get arrested for it. But here, 3 men charged in connection with Halloween terror plot. The point for me, according to available records, with one of the people's father they arrested appears to be Roger Sidrat, an award-winning Iranian-American poet. He did not immediately respond to comment. To me, I feel like that's relevant. The idea that they found some weird connection backwardly to Iran. I mean, this is what somebody like Kash Patel seems like what he would do. All right, just trying to wrap it up. I do have to get going. I'll come back to that in the next one. overall, guys, we're at a point now where there's basically nothing to back this up other than what they're claiming. It feels to me to get more flimsy as they arrest more people. And I was in the mind that they weren't even going to charge them because it didn't seem like there was much to go on, but they did. But we'll have to wait and see how it flushes out like any other story. But where we're at right now, with everything going on in the world, with how little they're giving you, very skeptical. And I mean, everything in me is telling me there's something to go wrong here, but hey, we've been wrong before in the past. That's why we wait for the facts to flesh out before we come to our conclusion. But we can look at what the evidence suggests. And right now, with what they've already been caught doing, I'm very much of the mind that this feels wrong. That where it's going is in the interest of creating the narrative that Dearborn or in the country with everything else that's happening is some kind of infiltration problem while we're watching where that problem really lies, where it really is growing, where it continues to proliferate. So thank you for tuning in today, guys. I'll leave you with a couple of points here on the way out. Pam Bondi, during the Arctic frost investigation, we found that special counsel seized President Trump's government-issued phone. This means Biden administration turned over Trump's phone. We can never be allowed this to let the government weaponize this again. Basically saying, I submitted these new documents to expose them. Okay. And I said, so when is someone going to be arrested for all these social media announced crimes? So far, the number is 0, Pam Bondi. Guess what? Probably never, despite the fact that they should be arrested for the crimes they committed. I'm simply saying that even though they've got evidence, they're not going to, most likely, because they never have, and that they're on the same side. Decenter News, a D.C. jury has acquitted Sean Dunn, who threw a subway footlong at the CPB agents, right? So they're going after all the big crimes. No, they're going after sandwich throwers. And even that gets acquitted because they have nothing. The point is, actual quotes from the courtroom. This case, ladies and gentlemen, is about a sandwich that landed intact, still in its subway wrapping. If you could smell the onions and the mustard, we are a joke. And they are I don't even think they're intentionally doing so, but they are making fun of you. And they are driving us in a place that the world is making fun of. 5 times August to finish simply says, what happened to the whole drain the swamp thing? Right? I mean, did we just forget about that? Bill Gates, BlackRock. No, he is the swamp, guys. And if you've been paying attention, you already knew that. No more than Biden. It's the same thing. Hopefully people can pay attention to this, do something about it, because we are being manipulated. They want you to start. And look, if you care more about what's going on with Muslims infiltrating the country, even though I think that's obviously not what's really going on, look at everything. Stand back and look at the big picture. Like, my point is, if you were worried about China influencing policy, why wouldn't you be equally concerned about Israel? I care about both. There's far more evidence for one of them. I simply hope you'll take the time to look. If you're honest and you care, it's there for you. Everything's sourced down below. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate your support. If you continue to support this platform and you believe in what we're doing, show us what it's worth to you, because we can't keep doing this without your support. Now, again, tomorrow we're going to be putting out the IMA panel. I've got some more coming out in general, some more articles coming. Derek has a good article that will probably be out tomorrow, but stay tuned. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.